What if the history we know is only half the story? Across ancient lands, hidden tombs, and lost artifacts, secrets wait that are too strange, too fragile to fit in books. Tonight we'll explore mysteries almost no one has seen, golden horns, spiral bones, and objects that whisper stories of a forgotten past. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. And if you're ready to uncover the untold, make sure to subscribe so you won't miss what comes next. The Mummified Falcon of Saqqara. In the vast necropolis of Saqqara, a site stretching across the sands of Egypt for thousands of years, archaeologists uncovered a discovery that speaks to the intimate connection between humans and the divine, the mummified falcon. Unlike the grand tombs of pharaohs or the towering pyramids, this artifact captures a more personal, symbolic, and mysterious aspect of ancient Egyptian belief, the reverence for birds as intermediaries between the mortal world and the divine. Falcons held profound significance in ancient Egypt. They were associated with Horus, the sky god, protector of kingship, and a symbol of power, vigilance, and divine insight. To the ancient Egyptians, mummifying a falcon was more than preserving flesh. It was preserving a sacred conduit, a living symbol of spiritual guardianship. The falcon was not merely an animal, but a messenger and a protector, bridging human devotion with the eternal. The process of mummifying the falcon was meticulous. Small yet intricate wrappings encased its body, preserving not only its form but the spiritual essence it represented. Resin, oils, and careful bandaging ensured longevity, reflecting the Egyptians' deep understanding of preservation and ritual. Archaeologists examining the Saqqara falcon note the precision and care, evidence of skilled craftsmen who treated these creatures as extensions of sacred practice, not mere offerings. The discovery site adds layers to its story. Found among other votive offerings, funerary items, and tombs dedicated to priests and elite figures, the falcon was likely part of a ritual context. It may have accompanied a pharaoh, priest, or worshipper into the afterlife, ensuring protection and favor from the gods. Every feather, every bone, every layer of linen tells a tale of devotion, of human attempts to reach beyond mortality and into the divine. Consider the symbolism. The falcon's eyes, once alert and penetrating, now preserved in death, reflect the Egyptians' desire to see beyond the human realm. Its wings, folded yet capable of flight, echo the hope for transcendence and divine guidance. Even in mummification, these qualities were revered and maintained, suggesting that ancient Egyptians understood the power of imagery, symbolism, and ritual as a form of communication with forces unseen. The Saqqara falcon also illustrates the interplay between humans and animals in sacred spaces. Unlike modern perceptions of pets or wildlife, these birds were entwined in spiritual practice. They were honored, revered, and elevated to a status bridging worlds. The act of mummification, repeated across generations, emphasizes the significance of continuity, the desire to maintain cosmic order, or ma'at, through ritual precision and careful preservation. Archaeologists exploring Saqqara describe the thrill of uncovering such an artifact. Tiny and delicate, the falcon can easily be overlooked, yet it carries immense historical and spiritual weight. Every fragment of linen, every layer of resin, and every positioning of the body provides insight into ancient Egyptian ideology. The falcon is a silent witness to ceremonies, prayers, and the devotion of people who lived thousands of years ago. It also raises questions about human intention. Why were falcons chosen? How did priests and artisans view these creatures, as sacred tools, as companions, or as literal embodiments of Horus? While some answers remain speculative, the reverence is unmistakable. The care in mummification and placement in tombs suggests a profound acknowledgement of the bird's spiritual role. The mummified falcon is a lens into broader Egyptian practices. It is part of a world where humans sought balance between life and death, mortal and divine, tangible and eternal. These rituals were not random. They were governed by belief, symbolism, and cultural continuity. The falcon embodies these principles, a living idea cast into preserved form, inviting reflection on the spiritual dimensions of daily life and death in ancient Egypt. Even today, scholars and enthusiasts are drawn to the Saqqara falcon, attempting to reconstruct its significance, its place in ceremonies, and its role in connecting mortals to the divine. Each observation of the artifact raises new insights about Egyptian religious hierarchies, artistic conventions, and the human desire to understand the cosmos. Imagine the falcon in its original context, perched within a shrine, perhaps with offerings of food, inscriptions, and prayers surrounding it. The sunlight filtering into a tomb would illuminate the careful wrappings and the gleaming eyes of statues nearby. Priests and worshippers would have moved quietly, their chants and gestures invoking protection and favor, the falcon a silent participant in this sacred choreography. The preservation of the falcon over millennia highlights both the fragility and resilience of memory. Organic materials, linen, feathers, all of these are vulnerable to decay, yet here, through careful ritual and environmental preservation, the bird endures. Its survival allows modern observers to touch, literally and metaphorically, a thread that connects past and present. The mummified falcon of Saqqara ultimately speaks to themes universal across time: devotion, symbolism, and humanity's desire to connect with forces greater than itself. Through this single bird, we glimpse a culture where even creatures were vessels of meaning, where life, death, and the divine intertwined in tangible, reverent practice. It reminds us that objects, no matter how small, can carry profound stories, stories that endure when we listen carefully, with curiosity and reverence. The falcon may never take flight again, but in its preserved form, it continues to soar across time and imagination. It bridges thousands of years, whispering tales of devotion, ritual, and belief, urging us to consider not just what humans build, but what they honor, preserve, and believe in. In studying the mummified falcon, we are reminded that history is alive in fragments. Each artifact, whether grand or small, is a storyteller, carrying messages from lives long past, offering insights into the hopes, fears, and spiritual endeavors of those who came before. The Saqqara falcon is a silent companion in this exploration, a winged emissary from the past, inviting us to witness, reflect, and wonder. The wooden serpent of Lake Nemi. On the quiet shores of Lake Nemi in Italy, the water sometimes shimmers with secrets. Long before tourists walked its edges, or fishermen cast their nets, this small volcanic lake was a sacred place, tied to rituals, myths, and whispers of ancient gods. And hidden beneath its surface, archaeologists once discovered something that still stirs the imagination: a carved wooden serpent, weathered by centuries, but carrying within its form a mystery no one has fully solved. The serpent is not large, it is not gilded, not armored, not a dragon of myth. Instead, it is shaped with care from wood, a body curving in lifelike coils, a head raised as if watching, waiting. But why would someone carve a serpent and place it in the waters of Nemi? Was it an offering, a guardian, or perhaps a symbol of power, meant to rest where the divine and the human worlds touched? To understand, we need to step back. Lake Nemi was not just a lake. To the Romans, it was the mirror of Diana. The goddess Diana, protector of the hunt, of women, of the moon, was worshipped here. Her sanctuary rose above the water, and her cult rituals drew pilgrims from across Italy. To her, offerings were given, fires were lit, and legends say that kingship itself could be claimed here, through trials of strength and fate. It was into this sacred landscape that the wooden serpent emerged. Archaeologists unearthed it when they explored the remains of ships buried beneath the lake, ships so vast and ornate that they seemed more like floating palaces than vessels. These belonged to Emperor Caligula, a man whose rule still echoes with infamy. On those ships were treasures, mosaics, marble columns, statues, and among them, this humble serpent, carved from wood. The serpent could have been part of a ritual. Serpents in Roman belief carried deep meaning. They were guardians of the household, symbols of rebirth, even messengers between the living and the underworld. To place one upon a sacred lake, near the sanctuary of Diana, may have been an act of devotion, or a plea for protection. But others wonder, was it more than a religious object? Could it have been a decoration aboard one of Caligula's ships, meant to impress, to awe, to frighten? Caligula was known for extravagance. He filled his ships with rare artifacts, with things meant to dazzle the senses. A serpent, twisting across wood, may have been both art and symbol, a reminder of nature's power, and of the emperor's dominion over it. Close your eyes and imagine the scene. The lake is dark, the moonlight rippling across its surface. The ships of Caligula float silently, torches flickering on their decks. Priests stand near the prow, chanting. The serpent, carved and gleaming in firelight, rests as if alive, its body catching shadows, its head turned toward the water. Then, silence, as offerings are lowered into the lake. Coins, food, perhaps even small idols. The serpent remains, a carved guardian between ritual and abyss. When the serpent was rediscovered, centuries later, it was weathered, fragile, and yet hauntingly lifelike. Wood rarely survives the ages. Fire consumes it, rot destroys it, insects devour it. And yet here it was, preserved by water, buried in silt, protected by accident. How many other wooden carvings were lost to time, burned or broken, leaving only this one to remind us of what was once common? The serpent's mystery deepens when we ask, was it Roman at all? Some scholars argue that it may predate Caligula's ships, that it could have been placed in the lake long before, perhaps even as part of older Italic traditions tied to Diana's cult. The serpent may have been an object of worship independent of Rome's extravagance, claimed later by Caligula when he built his floating palaces upon sacred waters. If so, then it carries with it not just Roman meaning, but something more ancient, something rooted in the primal reverence humans have always felt toward serpents. For in every culture, serpents appear. In Mesopotamia, they guarded temples. In Greece, they coiled at the feet of healing gods. In India, they slithered through the myths of Nagas. And here, at Lake Nemi, one lay in silence, carved from wood, its coils whispering across centuries. When you look at it now, behind museum glass, it seems both ordinary and extraordinary. A curve of wood, smoothed by time, yet undeniably alive in form. People pass by quickly, their eyes searching for brighter treasures, the mosaics, the statues, the weapons. But those who pause before the serpent feel something different. Not grandeur, not awe, but a quiet unease. As though this small object still carries with it a presence, a memory of rituals long faded. Think of the hands that carved it. A craftsman, perhaps working by firelight, shaping curves with patience. Did he know it would rest in a sacred place? Did he whisper prayers as he carved its eyes? Did he see it as just a commission, or as something more? And then think of the moment it was placed upon the ship, or lowered into the water, the ripples spreading, the reflection of the moon glimmering on its surface, a serpent, both alive and not alive, floating between worlds. We cannot know its full story, but maybe that is the point. The wooden serpent of Lake Nemi is not a puzzle to be solved. It is a presence to be felt, a reminder that the past does not always come to us in clear lines and answers. Sometimes it comes in fragments, in half-preserved shapes, in objects whose meaning slips just beyond reach. And in that distance, in that lingering uncertainty, lies the beauty of it. The serpent does not demand we solve it. It asks only that we remember. The clay masks of Valdivia. Along the coast of what is now Ecuador, centuries before the rise of the Inca, a people lived who shaped clay into more than just vessels and tools. They molded it into faces, human faces, expressive and haunting, fragile yet eternal. These are the clay masks of Valdivia, artifacts that have survived thousands of years, whispering fragments of lives and beliefs that history books barely mention. The Valdivia culture flourished around 3500 to 1500 BC, one of the oldest settled cultures of the Americas. Their villages hugged the coastline, their homes simple, their tools practical, their lives shaped by the rhythm of sea and soil. And yet, amid this practicality, they created objects that carried something more, a glimpse into how they imagined themselves, their gods, their dead, and their stories. The masks are small, often only a few inches across, molded with careful hands. Some are rough, others smooth, but each bears a face, eyes wide, mouths set in lines that suggest thought, emotion, or ritual silence. To look at them is to meet a person who lived thousands of years ago, their likeness preserved not in flesh or bone, but in clay. Archaeologists have long debated their purpose. Were they worn, tied to ceremonies of birth, death, or healing? Or were they meant as offerings, laid gently in the earth, or in the graves of ancestors? Some have holes at the edges, as though strings once passed through them, suggesting they may have been hung, displayed, perhaps even worn during rites. Close your eyes and imagine a Valdivia village. The ocean lies just beyond, its waves steady and endless. In the center of the settlement, a fire burns. Women shape clay into vessels for cooking. Men repair nets for fishing. Children laugh as they chase each other along the sand. But in one corner, away from the bustle, a figure sits with a lump of clay. Slowly, with steady hands, they press and shape it into a face. The features emerge: eyes, nose, mouth, simple but alive. When it dries, it will be hardened by fire, transformed from earth into something that resists time. Was this mask a portrait? Was it meant to capture the face of a loved one, a chief, a healer? Or was it an archetype, a symbol of all people, of ancestors as a collective presence? The answer has been lost, but the feeling remains. The masks are not perfect. They are not polished like Greek marbles, not gilded like Egyptian death masks. They are humble, made of clay pulled from the earth, shaped by hands that worked quickly. And yet, in their simplicity lies their strength. They remind us that art does not begin with grandeur. It begins with the human impulse to remember, to represent, to give shape to meaning. Some masks appear broken, intentionally shattered before being buried. This detail suggests ritual. Perhaps they were killed, like weapons often were in ancient burials, rendered unusable in the living world so they could serve in the world of spirits. The fragments still hold faces, though incomplete, as though reminding us that memory itself is fragile. Archaeologists have also found these masks in places that suggest fertility rituals. The Valdivia were known for their figurines of women, their emphasis on fertility and the cycles of life. A mask placed beside such figures might have represented the spirit of an ancestor watching over new life, ensuring survival in a world where harvests and births were precarious and sacred. Think about this. Over 5,000 years have passed since those masks were shaped. Whole civilizations have risen and fallen. Empires have carved their names into stone and watched them crumble, and yet these clay faces endure. They are small, fragile, and easily overlooked, yet they carry the echo of lives that might otherwise have vanished completely. When you stand before one in a museum, it does not shout its presence, it simply looks back. Its eyes, though simple dots or slits, meet yours. And in that moment, across 5 millennia, you feel the connection. Someone once made this, someone once held it, someone once cared enough to preserve a face in clay. What strikes many visitors is the ordinariness of the features. These are not gods with exaggerated forms. They are not monsters or demons. They are human, and that makes them all the more powerful. They are reminders that before history was written, people already sought to preserve themselves, to be remembered, to leave behind something that said, "We were here, this was us." The Valdivia masks are quiet relics. They do not reveal all their secrets. Scholars argue over them, theories shifting with each discovery. Were they used in shamanic journeys? Were they tied to the sea, to the moon, to the cycles of tides? Or were they simply portraits of ancestors, kept close as a way of remembering the dead? We may never know, but perhaps that is the gift of these masks. They do not close the past, they open it. They invite us to wonder, to imagine, to step into the world of a people who lived long before pyramids or written alphabets. They show us that even in small villages on distant shores, the human desire to create, to remember, and to ritualize life was already alive. And so the clay masks of Valdivia remain, fragments of earth shaped into human likeness, fragile yet enduring. They are not grand monuments, but they do not need to be. They are whispers of humanity's earliest art, quiet testimonies that the human face, the human story, has always been worth preserving. The bronze bull of Byblos. On the ancient shores of Lebanon, in the city of Byblos, archaeologists unearthed a figure no taller than a hand, yet charged with the weight of a civilization's beliefs. A bronze bull figurine, its surface aged with the patina of centuries, its form solid, compact, yet radiating a kind of power that transcends size. To understand the bull of Byblos, we must first step back into the city itself. Byblos was no ordinary settlement. It is one of the world's oldest continuously inhabited cities. Its origins stretching deep into the Neolithic, its heart beating across millennia as a center of trade, religion, and myth. To the Phoenicians, Byblos was a sacred place. To the Egyptians, it was a vital partner in trade, the source of prized cedar wood and skilled craftsmanship. And among its finds, this bronze bull speaks volumes. The bull, across ancient cultures, has always stood for something more than an animal. Its body, heavy with muscle, its horns sharp and gleaming, its stance unyielding. The bull has been a symbol of strength, fertility, vitality, and divine power. In Mesopotamia, bulls pulled the chariots of gods. In Crete, the bull leapt into legend as the Minotaur, and the creature wrestled by heroes. In Egypt, the Apis bull was worshipped as a sacred being, the very embodiment of divine presence on earth. So when we look at the bronze bull of Byblos, we are not seeing just an ornament. We are seeing a fragment of how the people of this ancient city imagined the link between themselves, their gods, and the raw forces of nature. Close your eyes and imagine the streets of Byblos thousands of years ago. The harbor filled with ships, their sails taut with wind, carrying cedar, ivory, and lapis lazuli. Markets bustling with merchants from Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Cyprus. The air heavy with incense, the smell of salt, the sound of voices in languages that mingled and overlapped. And somewhere in this city, a craftsman heated bronze, mixing copper and tin until molten metal shimmered like fire itself. Into a mold he poured the glowing liquid. When it cooled, the shape emerged, a bull, strong, enduring, eternal. Was it placed in a temple, offered to a god like Baal, the stormbringer, whose thunder was the sound of bulls across the sky? Or was it meant as a votive, a small, humble gift, left by a worshipper hoping for strength, prosperity, or fertility? Its smallness suggests intimacy. It was not meant for public display on a grand altar. It was meant to be held, to be touched, perhaps whispered to in prayer. What makes this figurine so haunting is its survival. Bronze corrodes, temples burn, cities fall, and yet this bull endured, resting beneath the soil, until unearthed centuries later. To hold it now is to feel the presence of an entire vanished world. The bull is not just an animal, it is a bridge between humanity and the forces they could not control. Storms, harvests, fertility of both land and people. All of these were imagined through the form of the bull. Its strength was nature's strength, its vitality was life's vitality. Its stubbornness was the endurance of a people who carved out their existence on the Mediterranean's shifting shores. Imagine a ritual in Byblos, A priest steps forward in the temple courtyard, the smell of burning cedar heavy in the air. Worshippers gather, carrying offerings. The bronze bull is lifted, held to the sky, and words are spoken, words we can no longer hear. Perhaps it was placed upon an altar, its small form catching the light of fire, glowing as though alive. In that moment, it was not just metal, it was presence. What fascinates archaeologists is how widespread this symbol was. From Byblos to Crete, from Anatolia to Egypt, the bull appears again and again, not as coincidence, but as testament to a shared ancient imagination. People across the Mediterranean and beyond looked at the bull and saw not just an animal, but a divine mirror. The Byblos figurine is one piece of that wider story, a puzzle piece in the great picture of humanity's first myths. And yet, this figurine also feels deeply personal. Its smallness draws us in. It is not overwhelming, not distant, it invites intimacy. Imagine someone holding it thousands of years ago, their thumb rubbing across the bronze, their breath forming a prayer. Perhaps it was placed in a grave, meant to accompany the dead into the beyond, carrying the strength of the bull with them. Perhaps it sat quietly in a home shrine, a family's private token of faith. When we look at it today, we see more than bronze. We see the weight of centuries. The figurine carries with it the memory of hands that crafted it, of eyes that gazed upon it with reverence, of hearts that turned to it in hope. It is a reminder that faith is not always grand. Sometimes it is small, portable, shaped in bronze, carried in the pocket of the faithful. The bronze bull of Byblos does not roar. It does not overwhelm, but like the clay masks of Valdivia, like so many artifacts of the ancient world, it speaks in whispers, whispers of belief, of strength, of humanity's search for meaning in the forces around them, and in its quiet way it endures, just as the city of Byblos itself has endured. A living link between the past and the present, a reminder that symbols may fade, but the human heart's need to create them never does. So when you picture that small bronze bull, let it guide you into the silence of ancient temples, into the voices of prayers long vanished, into the strength and mystery that shaped the ancient world. For in its compact form, it carries the weight of gods, storms, and the resilience of an ancient city whose story still lingers in the stones and the sea. The headless statues of Ain Ghazal. In the dusty heart of Jordan, near the city of Amman, lies one of the strangest archaeological discoveries ever made. The headless statues of Ain Ghazal. They are not towering monuments like the statues of Easter Island, nor glittering treasures like golden masks. They are humble, made of plaster, reeds, and simple tools. And yet, when archaeologists unearthed them in the 1980s, they realized they were staring at some of the earliest life-sized human statues ever created by human hands. These figures are almost 9,000 years old, born at the dawn of civilization itself. But here's where the mystery begins. Many of them are headless. Why would people craft statues so carefully, shaping their bodies, smoothing their surfaces, only to remove or bury the heads later? Was it ritual? Was it fear? Was it a practice we can't even imagine today? Let's step into their world. Picture Ain Ghazal, around 7000 BCE. A Neolithic village spread along the banks of the Zarqa River. The people here were among the first to farm. They tended goats, planted wheat and barley, and lived in houses made of mud brick. Their world was changing. They were no longer just hunter-gatherers. They were building communities, settling down, creating traditions, and in the center of these lives, they began to make statues. Not from stone, not from bronze, but from plaster made of burned limestone, carefully shaped around reed frameworks. The statues had long, thin bodies and flat, staring eyes made of bitumen. Some had faint traces of paint, as though once decorated with colors that time has long erased. At first glance, they may look crude, but when you remember their age, they are astonishing. These are among the earliest attempts at large-scale human representation. Before Egypt, before Mesopotamia, before writing itself, there were the statues of Ain Ghazal. Now imagine the moment of their creation. A group of villagers, mixing plaster by hand, smoothing it onto frames, shaping eyes, arms, legs. Perhaps chants accompanied their work. Or moments of silence. Perhaps they whispered names into the figures. Were they making gods, ancestors, spirits? We cannot know. But these statues were not casual. They were sacred, and yet they were never meant to last. The plaster was fragile. The figures cracked easily. Archaeologists discovered them not standing proudly, but buried deliberately, sometimes broken, sometimes missing heads. This raises questions that still puzzle scientists today. Why bury them? Why remove the heads? Some suggest ancestor worship. In many ancient Near Eastern cultures, the head was believed to hold the soul, the essence of a person. Perhaps these statues once represented ancestors, created for ritual, honored for a time, and then buried respectfully, their heads preserved separately. Others think the removal of heads was symbolic, maybe to release a spirit, maybe to mark the end of a cycle, maybe to prevent the statues from gaining too much power. Whatever the reason, the effect is haunting. Rows of headless figures, lying silently beneath the earth for thousands of years, waiting to be uncovered. Think about what that means for us today. These people lived almost 9 millennia ago. Their language is lost, their names forgotten, yet their hands shaped human figures. Figures that still stare back at us with hollow eyes, still ask questions we cannot answer. In a way, these statues are the first mirrors of humanity. Imagine standing in the excavation site. The air is hot, the soil dry, the sound of trowels scraping, and then, out of the dirt, a pale shape emerges. At first you think it's just rock, but slowly a shoulder, an arm, a torso appear, and then nothing where the head should be. It's eerie, unsettling, as if the past is hiding its own face from us. The headless statues are not alone in their strangeness. Other Neolithic sites across the Levant also reveal traditions of removing skulls from burials, plastering them, and decorating them with shells for eyes. People at this time had an obsession with faces, with heads, with the act of seeing and being seen. The Ain Ghazal statues fit into this larger mystery, but their sheer size and number make them extraordinary. Over 30 statues and busts were found, buried in carefully dug pits, almost as though the villagers wanted to hide their creations for eternity. Were these statues dangerous? Did they hold power that had to be controlled? Or were they simply part of a ritual cycle, created, celebrated, and then retired into the ground? The truth may never be known. Let's pause for a moment and reflect. The people of Ain Ghazal had no cities, no writing, no kings, yet they poured time and energy into creating lifelike statues. Why? What drove them? Was it religion, memory, a longing to connect with something greater than themselves? We too do the same. We build monuments, write books, carve our names into stone, trying to leave a mark against the flood of time. The Ain Ghazal statues tell us that this impulse, this need to be remembered, to give form to what is sacred, is one of the oldest parts of being human. And so, when we look at those headless figures, lying quietly in their pits, we are not just looking at artifacts, we are looking into a mirror of our own humanity, fragile, temporary, yet endlessly reaching for meaning. Perhaps the statues were never meant to give answers. Perhaps they were always meant to be questions. Questions carried through millennia, resting in silence until uncovered by modern hands. Questions that whisper still, who were we? What did we believe? Why did we bury our gods, our ancestors, our own reflections? The headless statues of Ain Ghazal may never speak, but in their silence they tell us the oldest truth of all, that mystery itself is part of our story. The bone harpoons of Katanga. On the banks of the Semliki River, deep in the Democratic Republic of Congo, archaeologists uncovered something that completely rewrote the story of human ingenuity. Buried in ancient soil were long, polished bone harpoons, delicate yet strong, carved with skill that seemed almost impossible for their age. When they were first discovered, researchers thought they must be from a few thousand years ago, but when the dating came back, the numbers shocked the world. 90,000 years old. These weren't the tools of early farmers or even the first settled communities. They belonged to people long before cities, long before writing, long before almost everything we think of as civilization. And yet, they reveal a sophistication, a patience, and a creativity that force us to reconsider what it meant to be human at that time. Let's walk through their story. Imagine the African savanna and forests nearly 100 millennia ago. The land is alive with animals, antelopes, hippos, crocodiles, elephants. The Semliki River winds through it, full of fish, shimmering in the sunlight. On its banks, a group of early humans sit together, sharpening bones, carving patterns, shaping tools with steady hands. What they are making are not crude splinters or chipped stones. They are harpoons, long, carefully polished bone spears with barbs along their sides. Barbs to grip, to hold, to prevent a catch from slipping away. These were not tools made by chance, they were designed with intent. The harpoons were perfectly suited for fishing, strong enough to pierce through the scales of giant catfish that swam the river's depths. This is the part that makes the Katanga discovery so remarkable. These bone harpoons show not only craftsmanship, but planning, foresight, and an understanding of the natural world. These people knew the rivers, knew the fish, knew how to design tools for survival. Think about it, 90,000 years ago, our ancestors were not just surviving, they were innovating. They were experimenting with materials, shaping bone into complex forms, using design principles that wouldn't look out of place thousands of years later. Some of the harpoons even have a kind of beauty to them, smoothly carved, balanced in shape, with symmetrical barbs. They are both functional and elegant. You can imagine one of those early hunters holding it, testing its weight, knowing instinctively how it would move through water, how it would strike. And the evidence suggests something even more fascinating. These people were fishing communities. They weren't just chasing herds across the plains. They had seasonal patterns. They gathered by the river. They made tools specifically for catching fish. This shows a level of adaptation, of planning, of knowledge that is incredibly advanced for the time. Now let's imagine the scene. It is evening on the Semliki River. The air is warm, thick with the sounds of insects. A small group of humans, our distant ancestors, wade quietly at the river's edge. In their hands, the bone harpoons gleam faintly in the fading light. They watch the water, patient, silent, waiting for movement beneath the surface. Suddenly, a ripple, a shadow. With a swift thrust, the harpoon strikes. The barbs catch, and the fish struggles, but the tool does its work. Soon, the hunters pull a massive catfish from the river, its scales glistening, its body heavy with food. This catch will feed their families, their community, giving strength for the days ahead. It is easy to think of them as primitive, but standing there in the twilight, harpoon in hand, they are as human as us. They understood patience, teamwork, design, and necessity, and through these tools we glimpse their world, a world of skill, knowledge, and survival woven together. When the harpoons of Katanda were first revealed, many scientists were stunned. For a long time, the common belief was that advanced tool-making, symbolic thought, and planning were things that developed much later, in Europe or the Near East. But Katanda told a different story. It said, Africa was the cradle of invention. These people, tens of thousands of years ago, were not lagging behind. They were innovators. They were experimenting with bone technology long before anyone expected. They had mastered fishing, a complex and resource-rich practice, proving that human ingenuity has always been older and deeper than we give credit for. Some researchers even argue that Katanda shows evidence of something bigger. Cultural tradition. The fact that these tools were made with such consistency suggests that the knowledge was shared, passed down, taught across generations. This wasn't just one genius making a tool. This was a community with memory, teaching children how to carve, how to sharpen, how to survive. And then comes the mystery. Why do we not see bone technology like this everywhere, at that same time? Were these harpoons unique to Katanda? Did this knowledge spread, or was it lost when communities moved, when climates changed, when rivers dried? We know so little. The soil keeps its secrets. The rivers flow on, and only fragments remain. A harpoon here, a carved bone there. But those fragments are enough to whisper that there is far more to our past than the simple story of Stone Age and Bronze Age. There were experiments, leaps of imagination, forgotten innovations scattered like seeds across time. The Katanda harpoons are one of those seeds, still shining faintly after nearly 100,000 years, reminding us that creativity is one of the deepest roots of humanity. So, as we sit with this mystery, imagine those ancestors by the river. Imagine the laughter after a good catch, the sharing of food, the careful shaping of another harpoon under firelight. Their world was harsh, uncertain, but they met it with skill and invention. And in the silent earth of the Semliki Valley, their tools waited, buried and forgotten, until our time, when we would finally uncover them, hold them in our hands, and realize that the story of human intelligence is older, far older, than we dared to think. The silver-handed king of Cerdanyola. In the quiet town of Cerdanyola del Valles, near Barcelona in Spain, archaeologists uncovered a grave unlike any other. Buried within was not just a skeleton, but a story that blurred the line between myth and reality. Among the bones lay a prosthetic hand, not of wood, not of leather, but of silver. It glimmered even after centuries beneath the soil, a crafted piece of metal shaped to replace what flesh had lost. The discovery left researchers astonished. Was this the grave of a warrior, a king, a leader who had lived with loss and yet refused to be broken? Or was this someone who became larger than life, remembered in both body and legend as the silver-handed king of Cerdanyola? Let us slow down, close our eyes, and imagine the world in which he lived. We are in the early medieval period, a time when kingdoms rose and fell like waves upon the Iberian landscape. Power was fragile, borders shifted constantly, and survival often depended on strength, cunning, and symbols that spoke louder than words. Imagine a man standing at the heart of his people, his right hand, lost, perhaps in battle, perhaps in accident, replaced not with something humble, but with a gleaming hand of silver. Picture the firelight glinting off the metal as he lifts it to address his followers. Imagine the awe it must have inspired. This was not just a tool, it was a statement. Silver carries meaning. It was costly, difficult to work, associated with purity, moonlight, resilience. To fashion a prosthetic hand of silver was not simply to restore function, it was to declare power, dignity, and identity. It told everyone who saw him, "I am not diminished, I am transformed." And so the silver-handed king, if indeed he was a king, must have carried an aura of myth even in his own time. Perhaps children whispered tales of the man with a hand of shining metal. Perhaps enemies looked across the battlefield and felt a chill at the sight of him. Half flesh, half something otherworldly. Archaeologists, of course, see the material reality. They see the bones of a man who lived centuries ago, whose life was marked by loss but also by adaptation. The silver hand was carefully made, crafted to fit where flesh had once been. It wasn't crude, it was deliberate, precise. But let's step back. Think about what this means in the bigger picture of human history. Prosthetics are often seen as modern miracles, but here, in medieval Spain, we find evidence of early bioengineering of identity. A prosthetic hand wasn't only about use, it was about meaning. It turned a wound into a symbol, a weakness into strength. There is a thread here that connects with ancient myths across cultures. In Celtic legend, there is Nuada of the Silver Hand, a king of the Tuatha De Danann who lost his arm in battle. Because a king could not be blemished, he was forced to step down, until craftsmen fashioned him a silver arm, restoring his right to rule. The myth is older than this grave by centuries, perhaps millennia. And yet here, in Cerdanyola, a body lies in the earth with a silver hand. Coincidence? Echo? Or the blending of myth and memory? Could it be that the people who buried him saw him as their own Nuada, their silver-handed king? Picture the burial. The mourners gather around. The silver hand gleams one last time in the fading light before the soil covers it. They whisper prayers, stories, perhaps even prophecies. To bury him with that prosthetic was to bury him not just as a man, but as a legend. And centuries later, when archaeologists unearthed him, that legend breathed again. The soil could not keep the secret forever. There's also something deeply human about this discovery. It reminds us that throughout history, people have always searched for ways to heal, to adapt, to carry on after loss. Whether it's bone harpoons carved in Africa 90,000 years ago, or a silver hand buried in medieval Spain, we see the same thread: creativity, resilience, identity. The silver-handed king is both mystery and mirror. We do not know his name, we do not know his voice, his victories, or his defeats. But we know this: he refused to let loss define him. He became more than flesh. And so, when we think of him today, we are not just studying a prosthetic, we are standing at the edge of myth, where archaeology and legend touch hands. One silver, one bone, one story, one silence. The silver-handed king of Cerdanyola remains both real and unreal. A man buried in Spain, and a figure shining in imagination, where his silver hand still catches the light of the moon. The copper serpent of Timna Valley. Deep in the parched desert of southern Israel lies a place that glows red under the burning sun, the Timna Valley. For thousands of years, this valley has been called the Cradle of Copper. Beneath its sandstone cliffs and winding canyons lie ancient mines where people once dug, smelted, and forged the very metal that would shape civilizations. But among all the ore, the slag, and the broken tools, archaeologists found something different, something strange. It was a serpent, not carved of stone, not cast in gold, but forged in copper. A curling, gleaming snake, deliberately crafted and placed with care. Why a serpent? Why here, in the copper mines of Timna? That single artifact has stirred questions that ripple far beyond the desert. Let's take a step back in time. Imagine the valley as it was 3,000 years ago. The air is thick with smoke from furnaces. Fires burn night and day. Miners carry baskets of ore, while smelters stoke the flames. The entire place smells of ash, sweat, and molten metal. Now picture, in the heart of this industrial chaos, a sacred space, an altar, a shrine, and there, standing tall and gleaming, the copper serpent. It was not just decoration, it was not a toy, it was a symbol, one that held weight, fear, and reverence. In many ancient cultures, the serpent was never just an animal, it was power itself. The Egyptians saw serpents as guardians of both chaos and protection. In Mesopotamia, serpents were linked to healing, rebirth, and the underworld. Even in the Hebrew Bible, the story of a bronze serpent crafted by Moses appears, a figure lifted high on a pole, through which those who looked upon it were healed of snake bites. The copper serpent of Timna Valley seems to echo that same mystery. A snake, born of the earth, forged in fire, then raised as an object of devotion. Archaeologists believe the Timna serpent may have belonged to an ancient Midianite shrine. The Midianites were desert dwellers, semi-nomadic people who moved through this land, trading, worshipping, and perhaps even working the mines. To them, the serpent may have been both protector and punisher, a reminder of life's fragility in the desert. Picture a group of worshippers standing before it. The flickering firelight dances across its copper coils, making it shimmer like a living snake. They offer prayers, food, maybe even sacrifices. The serpent is not just metal, it is alive with meaning. And yet, think of the irony here. Copper was the very lifeblood of Timna. It was dug from the ground, melted in furnaces, shaped into tools, weapons, and ornaments. And from that same copper, they shaped the serpent, a symbol of both danger and salvation. It is as though the valley itself spoke through the artifact. From the earth comes both death and life. Respect it, or it will devour you. When the copper serpent was unearthed, modern eyes struggled to make sense of it. Was it connected to the biblical stories? Was it a relic of Midianite worship? Or was it something more localized? A ritual object born only of Timna's unique world? We may never know, but what we do know is this. The serpent's presence was intentional. It was left behind, not by accident, but by belief. Let's pause here and feel the weight of that. Archaeology often gives us tools, bones, and pottery, the daily scraps of life. But sometimes it gives us symbols, objects that whisper of the spiritual worlds of ancient people. The copper serpent is one such whisper. It tells us that the miners and desert dwellers of Timna were not only breaking rocks and smelting ore, they were reaching for meaning, for protection, for connection to forces beyond themselves. In their world, the serpent was not just an animal that slithered across the sand. It was an eternal presence, a figure of fear, hope, and mystery. Today, when we stand in Timna Valley, the desert wind howling through the sandstone cliffs, it is easy to imagine the serpent watching still, not as copper anymore, but as an idea that refuses to die. The copper serpent of Timna reminds us that ancient people did not separate labor from worship. For them, mining copper was not just work, it was a sacred act, part of a cycle between earth, fire, and spirit. And in that cycle, the serpent was guardian. So when we speak of the copper serpent of Timna Valley, we are not only talking about an artifact in a museum case. We are talking about a desert people who lived with danger, who faced a harsh land, who dug into the bones of the earth and prayed that their lives would continue. The serpent glimmered for them as a promise, and maybe also a warning. And as the centuries passed, and the mines fell silent, the serpent lay hidden in the sand until it emerged again, carrying its mystery into our time. The copper serpent is more than metal. It is memory. It is story. It is the silent echo of a people who once stood in the desert, raised their eyes to a gleaming figure, and believed. The whale vertebra, thrones of Orkney, far in the cold waters of the North Atlantic, battered by storms and cloaked in mist, lies the Orkney archipelago. These islands, at the very edge of Scotland, have been home to humans for thousands of years. Wind sweeps over treeless plains, waves slam into ancient cliffs, and in the heart of this harsh, isolated land, people carved out lives that left behind mysteries we are still struggling to understand. Among their most haunting remains are not temples or tombs, but seats, chairs, thrones, if you will. And yet these are no ordinary thrones. They were carved from the vertebra of whales, enormous bones pulled from the sea, shaped into seats where someone once sat with authority, ritual, or reverence. Imagine for a moment what these objects looked like in their time. A massive vertebra, broad and curved, smoothed down and fitted into place. Unlike wooden chairs that rot, or woven seats that disintegrate, these whalebone thrones endured. They were heavy, cold, and powerful. Physical reminders of both the sea's bounty and its terror. And then, picture the setting. Small, stone-built chambers in ancient settlements like Skara Brae or other Neolithic sites on Orkney. Smoke fills the room from peat fires. The air smells of salt, damp earth, and fish drying on racks. Around the hearth, people gather, wrapped in furs. And there, at the center, or perhaps in the corner of power, sits a person on a whale vertebra throne. Who were they? A leader? A shaman? A storyteller? We can only guess. To understand the weight of these thrones, we need to think about what whales meant to the ancient people of Orkney. These were communities who depended on the sea. Fish, seals, seabirds, all were lifelines in a land where farming was meager and winters were long. A whale, whether beached or hunted, was an unimaginable gift. Its flesh could feed many, its fat could burn in lamps, and its bones, vast, strong, enduring, became tools, ornaments, and in this case, seats of significance. A whale was not simply an animal. To those Neolithic people, it must have seemed like a being of the deep, a monster, a god, or both. To sit upon its bones was to sit upon the power of the sea itself. Archaeologists found these thrones in homes that were otherwise modest. Small stone rooms, storage alcoves, hearths. But the presence of a whalebone chair makes one of those chambers suddenly different, special. It transforms a dwelling into a place of ceremony. Some suggest that the person who sat on such a throne might have presided over gatherings. Perhaps they led rituals tied to the sea, storms, or fertility. Others imagine them as the keepers of stories, oral historians whose voices carried across the firelight as listeners leaned close. Think of it, a winter storm raging outside, waves pounding the cliffs, and inside a storyteller seated upon the massive bones of a whale, weaving tales of gods, ancestors, and the sea. There's another layer here though, one that feels almost spiritual. The people of Orkney built monuments aligned with the stars and solstices. They carved symbols into stone. They buried their dead in chambered cairns that echo like cathedrals. This was not a society of simple survival. It was a people deeply attuned to cycles, mysteries, and the unseen. The whale vertebra thrones might not have been thrones of kings in the way we think of them. They might have been seats of ritual power. Maybe only certain people could sit on them. Shamans during ceremonies, elders during decisions, or perhaps those chosen to channel the voice of the sea itself. When you look at one today in a museum, it is silent, just a carved massive bone. But close your eyes and imagine the sound of the wind at Skara Brae. Imagine the hiss of the sea. Imagine the voice of someone seated upon it, speaking words that carried both authority and mystery. The very act of sitting on whale bones would have reminded everyone of where they lived, who they were, and what forces ruled their world. The sea was not kind. The sea was not gentle. The sea was powerful, unpredictable, and eternal. And yet from the sea came life. From the sea came the whale. From the whale came the throne. Some scholars also suggest something darker. Could these thrones have been linked to death? Whale bones sometimes appear in burial contexts. Perhaps the seat was not for the living at all, but for the dead, or for the ancestors, symbolically present in the room. A throne not of rule but of remembrance. In that case, the vertebra chair becomes even more mysterious. Was it a place where the living communed with the dead? Was it where the shaman sat in trance, speaking for those who had passed? We can only speculate, and that is what makes the whale vertebra thrones of Orkney so haunting. Archaeology gives us fragments, bones, stones, artifacts. The people themselves are gone, their voices long vanished. But the whale vertebra chairs refuse to be ordinary. They demand interpretation. They whisper of authority, ritual, and story. Whoever sat upon them carried weight, not only the weight of the chair, but the weight of tradition, myth, and the sea itself. And so, when we think of Orkney's Neolithic people, we should not imagine them as primitive, struggling villagers on a windswept rock. We should imagine them as people of immense creativity, carving meaning from their environment, transforming even the bones of giants of the sea into symbols of continuity and power. The whale vertebra thrones remain, solid as stone, yet filled with absence. They remind us that leadership in the past was not always about crowns or armies. Sometimes it was about sitting in the right place, at the right time, with the weight of the sea beneath you and the eyes of your people upon you. So the next time you picture Orkney, the storm, the salt, the endless waves, think also of the throne of bones. Imagine who sat there. Imagine the silence after their words. And remember that the sea does not only take, sometimes it leaves behind mysteries too heavy for time to wash away. The Serpent Column of Delphi. In the sun-drenched hills of central Greece, where olive trees stretch across the slopes and the air carries whispers of history, stands one of the most mysterious relics of the ancient world, the Serpent Column of Delphi. Its twisted bronze coils have survived millennia, yet its story remains tangled in time, memory, and unanswered questions. The column was not simply an ornament, it was forged to commemorate victory, a triumph of men over an empire, a symbol of unity, and a vessel of memory. In 4T, the Greeks celebrated their astonishing victory against the Persians at the Battle of Plataea. To honor this, a column was created, composed of 3 intertwined serpents rising skyward, their heads once crowned with a golden tripod. It was a monument of glory, yes, but it was also a riddle cast in bronze. Imagine Delphi in its prime, the sun glinting on white marble temples, the scent of incense drifting through the air, the constant murmur of pilgrims and priests. Among them, the serpent column gleamed. Its bronze coils reflected torchlight in the evening, catching the eyes of visitors who may have felt awe, reverence, or perhaps unease. Why serpents? In Greek symbolism, serpents were complex. They were guardians of sacred spaces, creatures of both healing and death, embodiments of renewal and danger. To intertwine 3 of them into a single column was to speak of power, unity, and mystery all at once. The column did not remain in Delphi forever. Centuries later, it was moved to Constantinople, where it still stands today, scarred by time, missing its original heads. Yet, even in this altered form, it continues to provoke questions. Archaeologists have long puzzled over its inscriptions. Each dedication, each line, tells a story, yet much is missing, lost to decay, war, and human neglect. The exact origins, the craftsmen who shaped it, and the original context of its installation remain partly shrouded. Some wonder about its hidden symbolism. The Greeks were master storytellers and mathematicians, layering meaning into art and architecture. Was the column simply a victory monument? Or did it encode secret knowledge about alliances, warfare, or cosmic order? Its serpents twist in a precise geometry that might suggest more than mere aesthetics. Could ancient visitors to Delphi have understood messages we can no longer read? The column also reminds us of the fragility of memory. Time has not been kind. Emperors looted treasures, earthquakes shattered monuments, and centuries of environmental exposure corroded the bronze. And yet, the serpents remain, silent witnesses to the passage of time. They whisper of an era when monuments were more than stone and metal, when they were keepers of story, oath, and myth. Think of the people who once gathered around it. Citizens of city-states, priests of Delphi, soldiers, travelers, all looked upon the column and saw a reflection of shared achievement, shared struggle, and perhaps divine favor. They may have debated its meaning, contemplated its curves, or offered prayers at its base. Even today, the column evokes a similar awe. Standing before it, you feel the weight of history, the echo of voices long gone, and the persistent question, how much did they intend for us to understand? How much was meant to remain hidden? Some modern scholars suggest that the serpent column was not only commemorative, but protective. Bronze serpents, twisting skyward, might have been thought to guard sacred spaces, ward off invaders, or even channel spiritual energy. Others see it as a purely political statement, a visual reminder of Greek unity after a momentous victory, a symbol meant to cement alliances and celebrate collective identity. Both interpretations could be true. Both could be false, and therein lies the beauty of mystery. As you consider the column, imagine the bronze in sunlight, the sharpness of the spirals, the long-forgotten golden tripod atop its heads. Imagine the murmur of voices across centuries, the chants, the prayers, the debates, and the quiet moments of contemplation. Each layer of history adds a dimension that cannot be fully untangled. Even without its original grandeur, the column commands attention. The serpents, still coiled, still rising, are reminders that history is rarely linear. It is a spiral, twisting, turning, overlapping. Some truths are visible, others hidden beneath layers of human ambition, neglect, and time. The serpent column is more than a monument. It is a link across time, a fragile thread connecting us to the minds and hands of ancient peoples. Its coils tell us that the past was full of complexity, reverence, and calculated intention. That even in victory, there was art, symbolism, and ritual. For those who look closely, it offers lessons in patience, observation, and imagination. For those who touch its surface, carefully imagining its original golden brilliance, it offers a tangible connection to a world that is otherwise gone. And so, the column remains. Bronze, twisted, silent. It has survived wars, migrations, and empires. Yet it continues to speak, if we know how to listen. Not with words, but with presence. The curves of its serpents, the rhythm of its coils, the history it holds, all whisper across time, inviting us to wonder, to ponder, and perhaps to dream. The serpent column of Delphi reminds us that even objects, cold and metallic, carry stories, beliefs, and mysteries. It is both a victory and a riddle, an echo of human ambition, and a testament to the enduring power of the past. The red-stained walls of Çatalhöyük. In the Anatolian plains of modern-day Turkey lies one of the most enigmatic settlements of the ancient world, Çatalhöyük. For thousands of years, this sprawling Neolithic city was alive with smoke, clay, and the rhythm of daily life. People cooked, slept, worshipped, and created in tightly packed mud brick homes. Narrow alleys ran over roofs instead of between them, and life here was intimate, chaotic, and intensely communal. But among the many rooms, one feature has haunted archaeologists and historians alike: the red-stained walls of its shrines. Deep red pigment, ochre in hue, coated walls that were otherwise simple clay. The color is striking, unsettling, almost otherworldly. And though Çatalhöyük has been excavated for decades, the meaning of these walls remains elusive. Step inside one of these ancient shrines, the air would have been heavy with smoke from hearths, dust from the clay floors, and the faint tang of ochre pigment. Perhaps you see figures painted onto the walls, human shapes, abstract forms, or the traces of ritual. The red of the walls might symbolize blood, life, death, fertility, or protection. Scholars debate endlessly. Some argue it represents ancestral presence, others see it as ritual bloodletting, a record of spiritual practice lost to time. Every stroke of pigment raises questions. Who painted them? Was it one person, or a community effort? Was the act itself more important than the images it produced? We may never know, but the red color has survived for nearly 9,000 years, stubbornly holding onto a secret it refuses to reveal. Çatalhöyük itself is astonishing for many reasons. It was an urban center in the Neolithic, yet it lacked streets as we know them. Roofs were used to navigate from one home to another. Walls were shared between dwellings. Life was lived in close quarters. A mix of family, neighbors, and perhaps spiritual leaders who oversaw ritual spaces like the red-stained shrines. Within these shrines, archaeologists have found human skulls, sometimes plastered and decorated. Animal remains, carefully placed, suggest ritual offerings. Figurines of women, often interpreted as fertility icons, stand among the ashes, and always, the red walls look down upon it all, silent, unwavering, as if watching centuries of history pass by. The pigment itself is fascinating. It comes from ochre, finely ground, mixed with water or fat to create a paint. It is resilient, able to withstand centuries of erosion, yet delicate, easily flaked or scratched away. Each red wall is a direct connection to the Neolithic mind. A choice, a ritual, an intention. Someone, thousands of years ago, reached for this color, knowing it would outlast their life, their name, their story. Why red? Some suggest blood, as a symbol of life and death. Others propose protection, a way to sanctify a space against evil spirits or misfortune. Perhaps it was fertility, the lifeblood of the community, the hope for children, harvests, and prosperity. Perhaps it was all of these things at once, or something we cannot even imagine. Walking through the site today, the red pigment appears muted, faded by time and weather. But imagine it in its prime, vibrant, commanding attention, transforming ordinary clay walls into sacred, luminous spaces. You can almost hear the murmurs of the people within, the chants, the prayers, the scraping of brushes as the red ochre was applied. And yet, as with many ancient practices, the meaning has been lost. Unlike written history, these walls do not explain themselves. They offer emotion, presence, and wonder, but no clarity. We are left to interpret, to hypothesize, to imagine, and that ambiguity is precisely what makes them so compelling. Some researchers see parallels with other Neolithic sites, where ochre was a ritual medium used in burials or ceremonial spaces. Others emphasize the uniqueness of Catalhuyuk, a densely populated settlement, with red shrines integrated into homes, suggesting that ritual was not separate from daily life, but intertwined with it. Religion, community, and survival coexisted in intimate spaces, punctuated by the striking red of these walls. The red-stained walls challenge our assumptions. They force us to consider that early humans were not primitive in thought or art. They had complex social structures, spiritual beliefs, and aesthetic choices. Each red wall is a message across time, cryptic, deliberate, and persistent. Imagine sitting in one of these rooms, the walls surrounding you in deep red, the flicker of a hearth casting shadows across ancient clay. Perhaps you feel the presence of the past, the weight of countless generations who lived, loved, feared, and worshipped here. You sense the deliberate choice in every stroke of ochre. The red was not accidental, it was intentional, sacred, powerful. Even today, thousands of years later, the color evokes response. We feel curiosity, awe, and sometimes unease. The walls are more than pigment, they are time made tangible. Catalhuyuk teaches us something profound about memory, art, and the human impulse to mark existence. Ordinary people in ordinary homes painted extraordinary walls that speak across millennia, and the red-stained shrines endure as a bridge to a past that is both familiar and alien, intimate and distant, simple and enigmatic. The red walls remind us that history is not just about kings, empires, or battles. It is about human intention, the choices we make, the ways we seek to connect with the unseen, the ways we try to make our lives meaningful. The walls do not tell us everything. They do not explain themselves, but they invite us to wonder, to feel, and to imagine. In the end, the red-stained walls of Catalhuyuk remain both a mystery and a testament, a quiet, enduring echo of Neolithic life, ritual, and creativity. The melted skulls of Jericho Tower. In the ancient city of Jericho, one of the oldest continuously inhabited settlements on Earth, layers of history lie beneath every stone and every footstep. For thousands of years, people lived, fought, built, and perished here, leaving traces that modern eyes are only beginning to decipher. Among these traces is one of the most haunting archaeological mysteries, the melted skulls of Jericho Tower. These are not ordinary skeletal remains, found in a tower on the edge of the ancient city. These skulls are plastered, melted, and transformed in ways that defy simple explanation. The technique appears deliberate. Some archaeologists suggest that the faces were intentionally reshaped, coated with plaster, and painted to resemble the living, or perhaps to preserve a memory that words could not convey. Imagine the tower in its prime. Jericho's walls rose high, built for defense, yet within the stones lay domestic spaces, granaries, and shrines. In one corner, a chamber held skulls, carefully arranged, plastered over, some with traces of red ochre or pigment. They were human faces, yet no longer fully human. They were altered, transformed, becoming something between life and death, presence and memory. The plastered skulls raise questions that echo through time. Who were these people? Were they leaders, warriors, or ordinary citizens? Why were their faces covered, molded, and painted? Scholars debate whether this was a ritual of veneration, a method of ancestor worship, or a protective measure against evil spirits. Perhaps it was all three, or something we cannot even begin to imagine. Each skull carries its own story. The eyes, once hollow, were sometimes accentuated. The noses and mouths smoothed over, carefully reconstructed. It is as if someone wanted to preserve identity, not just the body, but the person's presence, their memory, and their significance to the community. There is intimacy here, a connection across millennia between the living and the dead, expressed in plaster, pigment, and human touch. Jericho itself was a city of walls, towers, and life that thrived in the harsh environment of the Levant. Its towers were defensive, but also symbolic, marking the power of the city and its rulers. The plastered skulls were found within these walls, suggesting they may have been protected, hidden, or sanctified, reserved for those with special status or for particular rituals. Archaeologists are fascinated yet perplexed. The technique appears unique to this period and place. Plastering skulls is not unknown elsewhere, but the method, context, and artistic execution at Jericho Tower remain unmatched. Each discovery adds a piece to the puzzle, but also deepens the mystery. Some suggest that these skulls were not just memorials but active participants in ceremonies. Perhaps they were displayed during rituals, their faces painted, their expressions conveying authority, warning, or guidance. Others propose that the melted appearance resulted from exposure to fire, either accidental or deliberate, part of a ritual cleansing or symbolic transformation. And yet, even with these hypotheses, certainty eludes us. The past does not speak clearly, especially when the messages are encoded in human intention, ritual, and artistry. Each skull is both a person and an enigma, simultaneously present and absent, tangible and elusive. The plaster itself is remarkable. It is durable yet delicate, applied with care, sometimes in layers. In some cases, traces of pigment suggest that color played a role: red for blood, black for death, white for purity, perhaps. The skulls were not meant to be forgotten. They were preserved deliberately, intended to endure long after the city's towers crumbled. Consider the hands that worked on these skulls. Those who plastered and painted them were intimately familiar with the faces they touched. They knew the contours, the proportions, the subtleties of expression. In doing so, they forged a bridge between the living and the dead, creating a form of remembrance that was more than mere burial. This practice, now silent, invites reflection. It shows us a culture profoundly aware of mortality, memory, and legacy. They sought to preserve what words and stone alone could not convey, the essence of a person, frozen in plaster, enduring in silence. Modern Jericho is a place of layered history, archaeological dig sites, bustling streets, and quiet ruins. Yet when we encounter these plastered skulls, we glimpse a time when human life, death, and memory intertwined in ways both intimate and mysterious. They remind us that the past is never truly gone. It persists in objects, in rituals, and in traces of human care that defy time itself. Every melted skull whispers a story, though we cannot fully hear it. It speaks of individuals, communities, and belief systems that no longer exist. It challenges our understanding of ritual, identity, and reverence. And it compels us to ask, how do we honor the dead, and how did those who came before us perceive life, death, and memory? The melted skulls of Jericho Tower are more than artifacts. They are time capsules of intention, expressions of humanity reaching across thousands of years. They endure, quiet and enigmatic, and in their silent presence, they invite us to contemplate the richness, complexity, and mystery of early human civilization. Even today, they leave us with the same mixture of awe and puzzlement that must have accompanied their creation, a profound connection to a world at once foreign and deeply human. The ivory lions of Samarra. In the heart of ancient Mesopotamia, along the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates, the city of Samarra once thrived, a place of culture, trade, and artistry. Amid the ruins of palaces and ceremonial spaces, archaeologists uncovered an object that continues to baffle and fascinate: the ivory lions of Samarra. Small, yet commanding, these carvings capture a level of craftsmanship and symbolic meaning that hints at a complex, ancient worldview. The lions are carved from ivory, delicate but enduring. Each detail, the sinewy muscles, the rippling mane, the alert posture, speaks of a skill that feels almost impossibly refined for its time. These were not mere toys or decorations. They were symbols, objects that carried meaning far beyond their physical form. Imagine a palace in Samara centuries ago. A ruler walks through halls lined with tapestries, bronze vessels glinting in the sunlight, and ivory sculptures placed with care. Perhaps these lions were positioned at entrances, guarding sacred spaces, or they adorned the throne room itself, reminding all who entered of power, courage, and vigilance. The choice of lions is deliberate. Throughout human history, lions symbolize strength, authority, and protection. Yet these ivory lions are more than simple symbols. They are expressive, almost lifelike, capturing movement and presence. They seem ready to spring forward, to observe, to judge, a frozen moment of vitality preserved in bone-white material. The craftsmanship raises countless questions. How were these lions carved with such precision? Ivory is a challenging medium, requiring patience, skill, and tools capable of delicate work. The artisans of Samara must have spent countless hours, each stroke deliberate, each contour calculated. What motivated them? Was it devotion, pride, or fear? Perhaps all three. Historians and archaeologists continue to debate the function of these lions. Were they ritual objects, designed for ceremonies invoking protection or divine favor? Were they gifts or diplomatic offerings, passed between rulers to symbolize alliances and prestige? Or were they purely aesthetic, created for the sheer joy of artistry? The truth remains elusive, hidden in the silence of centuries. Even more mysterious is how these carvings survived at all. Samara experienced waves of conquest, decay, and abandonment. Many treasures were lost, looted, or destroyed. Yet the ivory lions endured, preserved in layers of sand and debris, waiting for modern eyes to rediscover them. Their survival feels almost miraculous, a small window into a culture whose full complexity we can only imagine. The lions also hint at connections beyond Samara. Similar ivory artifacts have been found across the ancient Near East, suggesting trade networks, shared symbolism, and artistic influence spanning hundreds of miles. Each lion is thus both local and cosmopolitan, grounded in a city, yet connected to a wider world of ideas and exchange. Consider the sensory experience of these lions. If you hold one in your hands, you feel its weight, the smooth polish of ivory, the contours of carved fur, the subtle imperfection that marks it as human work. This is not mass production, this is intention made tangible, a bridge between artist and observer across thousands of years. Beyond their physical beauty, these lions evoke emotion. They inspire awe, curiosity, and reverence. You may feel a connection to a ruler or artisan who lived millennia ago, imagining their world, their fears, and their aspirations. They remind us that humans have always sought to express power, identity, and meaning through art, a universal impulse that transcends time and geography. The lions also invite reflection on impermanence and preservation. Palaces crumble, civilizations fade, but art can endure. These small sculptures outlasted walls, roads, and even the city itself. They speak of a human desire to be remembered, to leave something enduring behind, even in a fleeting world. Archaeologists continue to study the lions, using advanced imaging techniques, chemical analysis, and historical comparisons. Each discovery adds nuance, but also deepens the mystery. We can describe their posture, their carving technique, the source of ivory, but the full significance, the intentions, the beliefs, the spiritual resonance remains just out of reach. Imagine walking through a museum today, seeing these lions behind glass. They appear serene, almost innocent, yet they carry weight far beyond their size. They are messengers of the past, silent witnesses to the ambitions, rituals, and artistry of Samara. Each one invites you to slow down, to reflect, to connect with a human story, almost impossible to reconstruct fully. The ivory lions of Samara remind us that history is not just about dates, wars, or kings. It is about human creativity, intention, and legacy. They speak across millennia, whispering about power, protection, artistry, and devotion. They challenge us to imagine a world we can only glimpse through fragments, yet they also reassure us that some essence of humanity endures, carved in delicate ivory, immortalized in the smallest of gestures. In their quiet, enduring presence, the lions invite contemplation. They are not just objects, they are portals into a world both familiar and alien. They show the care, skill, and thought of human hands long gone, reminding us that even in ancient cities like Samara, life was vibrant, rich, and full of wonder. Through these carvings, we glimpse the intersection of artistry, belief, and daily life, a window into the human heart, preserved in ivory for all who dare to look closely. The ivory lions of Samara endure as a testament to a civilization that prized beauty, symbolism, and connection, leaving behind a legacy that continues to captivate, intrigue, and inspire. The wolfskin warrior burials of Siberia. Across the frozen expanse of Siberia, where the wind carries whispers of centuries past, archaeologists have uncovered a discovery that continues to fascinate. the wolfskin warrior burials. These graves, hidden beneath layers of permafrost, hold more than bones. They carry stories of survival, ritual, and identity in one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. The burials are unlike anything most people imagine when thinking of Siberia. Skeletons are found clothed in wolf pelts, carefully arranged alongside weapons, tools, and sometimes intricate ornaments. The wolf skins themselves suggest more than practical clothing. They are a symbol, a deliberate choice linking the deceased to the strength, cunning, and spirit of the wolf. Picture the frozen tundra long ago. These people lived in a world where survival was constant, where the line between hunter and hunted was narrow and unforgiving. Wolves were respected, feared, and perhaps even revered. To wear the skin of a wolf in death was to claim its essence, to carry its power into the afterlife, to walk between worlds as both human and spirit. In the graves, archaeologists have found weapons laid with precision, arrowheads, knives, and sometimes spears. Their placement hints at belief in a journey after death, one that required tools for survival. Perhaps the warriors would need their strength, their cunning, and their implements to navigate a world beyond the living, just as they did while alive. The wolfskin warrior burials also reveal social complexity. Not everyone received such treatment. These burials suggest status, recognition, and respect. Some of the graves are more elaborate than others, with additional animal offerings, carved ornaments, or carefully folded clothing. These details speak to a culture that understood hierarchy, honor, and ritual, even in extreme environments. The wolf itself is central to the mystery. Why this animal? Why this connection? Scholars propose several ideas. The wolf may have been a totemic symbol, representing the warrior's clan, lineage, or spiritual guide. It may have symbolized bravery and cunning, qualities essential to life in Siberia's icy landscapes. Or it may have been believed to protect the deceased in the afterlife, warding off malevolent spirits or guiding their soul. The preservation of these burials is astonishing. Siberia's permafrost has frozen both time and detail. Pelts remain intact, wooden artifacts still hold their shape, and even traces of color or pigment on clothing occasionally survive. Handling these discoveries is like reaching across millennia. You can almost feel the hands that prepared the grave, the care with which each object was placed, the thought behind every choice. Some of the skulls show signs of ritual modification, subtle carvings or markings that may indicate rank or achievements. Combined with the wolf pelts, these details suggest a society in which identity, reputation, and ritual were intertwined. Death was not the end, it was an extension of life, a carefully constructed passage to eternity. The burials also hint at connections beyond Siberia. Trade networks or cultural exchange may have influenced the placement of goods, the types of weaponry used, or the techniques for preparing wolf skins. These were not isolated people, they were part of a broader world, connected by ideas, practices, and beliefs that spanned continents and generations. Archaeologists continue to study these burials using advanced technologies. Isotopic analysis reveals diet and mobility. DNA testing uncovers genetic relationships, and imaging techniques allow a closer look at the pelts and artifacts without disturbing them. Every new finding adds depth, yet the fundamental mystery remains: who were these warriors, and why did they choose the wolf as their eternal companion? Consider the human element. These were men and women who faced the harsh Siberian winters, hunted, fought, and survived in a world where life was fragile. To honor them, their communities created a ritual that merged the human with the animal, the living with the spiritual. There is intimacy here, a recognition that even in death, identity, bravery, and legacy mattered. The burials challenge modern assumptions about ancient Siberian life. They reveal sophistication, ritual, and artistry, where outsiders may only expect isolation and struggle. They show us a people deeply attuned to nature, capable of both survival and symbolic expression, blending practicality with profound spiritual insight. As we imagine these wolfskin warriors, it's easy to see them as figures of legend, silent guardians, powerful hunters, carriers of wisdom from the ice. Yet they were real, flesh and blood, with families, fears, and triumphs. The wolfskins were their armor in death, their testament to courage, and a tangible connection to something beyond human experience. The wolfskin warrior burials of Siberia endure as both historical record and enigma, inviting reflection on mortality, identity, and the lengths to which humans go to preserve their essence. They remind us that even in the coldest, most desolate places, humans sought connection, meaning, and remembrance. In their quiet endurance, beneath layers of ice and soil, these warriors speak across time, bridging the gap between ancient survival and modern curiosity. They are a testament to resilience, ritual, and the human desire to be remembered, even in the harshest landscapes our planet has ever offered. The bronze boar of Etruria. In the rolling hills of ancient Etruria, where the wind carries whispers of civilizations long vanished, artisans crafted objects that captured both imagination and reverence. Among these creations lies one particularly enigmatic piece, the bronze boar of Etruria. Small yet imposing, delicate yet powerful, this sculpture invites questions about ritual, symbolism, and the worldviews of the Etruscans, a people who thrived in Italy long before the rise of Rome. The bronze boar is more than a simple figurine. Its sculpted form radiates energy, taut muscles, fierce stance, bristled back, and eyes that seem to glint with life. It's a predator captured in metal, a moment of movement frozen across centuries. Unlike everyday objects, this was designed to convey meaning, not merely utility. Imagine an Etruscan sanctuary centuries ago. The smell of incense hangs in the air, torches flicker against stone walls, and priests or artisans carefully place objects in shrines. Here, the boar is not just a decoration. It may have been a votive offering, left to honor a deity, or a talisman, intended to channel strength, courage, and ferocity into the world of the living. Boars in ancient Etruscan culture carried symbolic weight. They represented valor, hunting prowess, and sometimes divine protection. The very act of capturing one in bronze, painstakingly casting and shaping it, speaks to the respect and awe these animals inspired. The sculpture is alive with tension, a frozen heartbeat of nature immortalized in metal. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. Bronze casting in ancient Etruria was a meticulous process, involving molds, heating, and careful finishing. Every line of the boar's anatomy was deliberate, from the curling tusks to the arch of the spine. The subtle texture of fur suggested in metal. It required skill, patience, and a deep understanding of both the material and the living subject it represented. The context of these artifacts adds to their mystery. Many were found in burials or religious sites, suggesting they played a role in rituals surrounding death, protection, or spiritual power. Some scholars propose that the boar was a companion for the deceased, symbolically guiding or defending them in the afterlife. Others argue it represented a deity or a sacred animal, central to ceremonies and societal beliefs. The bronze boar also raises questions about Etruscan society. Who commissioned these works? Who created them? Were they artisans serving temples, wealthy families, or rulers? And why choose the boar over other animals? Its ferocity, resilience, and intelligence made it a fitting symbol, but its recurring presence in art suggests a deeper cultural resonance, perhaps a story now lost to time. Despite the centuries, the sculpture endures. The metal, darkened with age, still captures light and shadow, revealing details as if the boar might stir at any moment. Its survival is remarkable, given wars, looting, and decay that have erased so much of Etruscan civilization. Holding it in your mind, you can almost feel the hands that shaped it, the reverence with which it was placed, the meaning it carried to those who first encountered it. Consider the emotional resonance. To the ancient viewer, the boar was power and spirit condensed into form. Its presence evoked courage, hunting skill, or divine favor. It was not merely admired, it was respected, perhaps even feared. And now, millennia later, it continues to inspire awe, connecting modern observers with the worldview and artistry of a civilization long gone. The bronze boar of Etruria is a window into an ancient world, one where humans and animals were intertwined, not just physically, but symbolically and spiritually. Each curve, each line of bronze is a message, a fragment of thought, belief, and artistry preserved against the passage of time. Archaeologists continue to study such pieces, comparing them to similar finds across Etruria and beyond. Every discovery adds nuance, techniques, origins, religious or social significance. Yet for all we learn, the boar remains enigmatic. It is a fragment of a culture whose full meaning eludes us, a whisper from the past that refuses to be fully explained. And yet, in its silence, it speaks volumes. The bronze boar reminds us that art was never merely decorative, it was expressive, symbolic, and enduring. It is a connection across time, from Etruscan hands to our own, an enduring testament to human creativity, spirituality, and the desire to capture life, energy, and meaning in a tangible form. Even today, gazing upon its bronze form, one cannot help but feel a sense of wonder. The boar stands frozen, eternal, bridging millennia. It tells us that human fascination with strength, courage, and the natural world is ancient, a thread that connects us with those who lived and thrived in places now vanished beneath history. The bronze boar of Etruria survives as both artifact and enigma, a small, powerful echo of a civilization's values, artistry, and imagination. Its presence invites reflection, curiosity, and reverence, reminding us that history is full of hidden treasures, waiting to reveal themselves to those patient enough to observe, listen, and wonder. The crystal-studded mask of Monte Alban. High atop the rolling mountains of Oaxaca, Mexico, the ancient city of Monte Alban rises like a sentinel over the valleys below. From its plazas and temples, civilizations long vanished once observed the rhythm of life, the cycles of the sun, and the whispers of the wind. Among the many artifacts unearthed here, one piece stands apart, the crystal-studded mask. At first glance, it appears almost otherworldly. Carefully shaped from jade, obsidian, and other precious materials, the mask is adorned with tiny crystal inlays that catch the light in an almost magical way. It is both delicate and commanding, a blend of artistry and ritual significance, designed to impress, to intimidate, or perhaps to connect the wearer with forces beyond human comprehension. Consider the wearer of this mask. Monte Alban was a city of power, politics, and ceremony. Priests, rulers, and elite members of society would have moved among its plazas, performing rituals that intertwined the spiritual and the earthly. To wear a mask like this was not merely decoration, it was transformation. The crystals would have sparkled in torchlight, sunbeams, or ceremonial fires, imbuing the wearer with an almost supernatural aura. The mask may have served multiple purposes. Some scholars suggest it was used in funerary rituals, placed on the faces of the deceased to ensure safe passage into the afterlife. Others propose it was a ceremonial mask, worn by priests or rulers during sacred events, acting as a conduit between humans and the gods. Every crystal, every carefully shaped stone, was chosen for meaning and placement. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. Monte Alban artisans understood both the symbolic and practical aspects of working with crystal and stone. The mask's delicate structure would have required steady hands, knowledge of material properties, and patience. Unlike modern mass-produced items, each mask was unique, a labor of devotion and artistry. It tells us that these people saw beauty and power as inseparable, that spiritual and material mastery were intertwined. The mask also hints at Monte Alban's wider cultural network. The materials used, certain types of crystal, jade, and shell, were not always local. They speak of trade, exchange, and communication between distant communities. The mask thus becomes more than an object. It is a record of connection, ambition, and the movement of ideas across space and time. Imagine the ceremonies where it was worn. Torches flickering, drums and flutes echoing across stone plazas, smoke curling into the mountain air. The mask catches the light, refracting it in dazzling patterns. Those who gazed upon the wearer would see not just a person, but a figure of power, a living representation of divine authority, the human face transformed into something eternal. Some masks, archaeologists believe, were created specifically for funerary purposes. Placed upon the faces of rulers or elite individuals, they would guard the spirit, reflect cosmic order, or symbolize transformation from mortal to divine. The crystals may have been believed to hold spiritual energy, or to guide the soul through the journey beyond life. The mask's discovery in Monte Alban offers a glimpse into the rituals, beliefs, and aesthetics of a civilization whose understanding of life, death, and power was profoundly sophisticated. Every cut, every crystal placement, is a deliberate choice. It is not only artistry, it is philosophy, theology, and cultural expression molded into a tangible form. What continues to fascinate scholars and enthusiasts alike is the intimate connection between object and belief. The mask is not just a relic, it is a bridge between worlds. It tells us that for the people of Monte Alban, life and death, the human and the divine, the visible and the invisible, were never separate. They were intertwined in every act, every creation, and every ceremony. Even today, holding an image of the mask in your mind, one can sense its presence. You can imagine the shimmer of the crystals, the weight of ritual responsibility, and the silent reverence of those who crafted it. It speaks across millennia, offering a story of skill, devotion, and mystery, a story that cannot be fully explained, only felt. The crystal-studded mask of Monte Alban stands as a testament to human ingenuity, spiritual vision, and artistic mastery. Its survival through centuries of decay, conquest, and neglect reminds us that beauty and meaning endure, even when the world around them changes. Each detail preserved is a whisper from a society that valued not just power, but the expression of that power in ways that continue to inspire awe today. Archaeologists continue to study it, uncovering more about Monte Alban's social hierarchy, spiritual practices, and trade networks. Every discovery deepens the mystery. Who wore the mask, for which ceremonies, and what did they truly believe it could do? And yet, for all our study, some questions remain unanswered. The mask retains its aura of enigma, a silent guardian of a civilization whose secrets are only partially revealed. The crystal-studded mask of Monte Alban reminds us that the past is not static. It is alive in objects, in stories, in the careful touch of an artisan's hand preserved across millennia. It encourages us to reflect, to wonder, and to recognize that some mysteries are meant to inspire awe rather than provide closure. It endures, not just as a relic, but as a connection across time. from ancient hands to modern eyes, from ceremonial firelight to the imagination of those who seek to understand. In this mask, the Etruscan spirit meets ours, and the story of Monte Alban continues to resonate, crystal by crystal, century by century. The sand-covered temples of Musawwar, Rata Sufra. In the vast, sun-scorched deserts of Sudan, far from the bustling cities and modern roads, lie remnants of a civilization long forgotten. Musawwar Rata Sufra is not merely an archaeological site, it is a testament to human ambition, spiritual devotion, and the passage of time. Here, sand drifts silently across vast courtyards and crumbling walls, hiding temples, statues, and sacred spaces that once thrummed with ritual and life. The temples of Musawwar Rata Sufra are remarkable for their scale, design, and the mysteries they conceal. Constructed during the Kingdom of Kush, roughly between 3rd century BCE and 3rd century CE, these structures were centers of worship, administration, and ceremonial activity. Unlike other sites in Nubia, Musawwar Rata Sufra reveals a complexity and grandeur that continues to puzzle historians. Its courtyards, walls, and pillars are adorned with carvings, yet much of its meaning has been lost to time. Walking through the ruins in your mind, imagine enormous courtyards lined with stone pillars, now partially buried under wind-blown sand. The temples were carefully planned, with intricate channels for water, areas for offerings, and sanctuaries that house statues and altars. Many of these sanctuaries were dedicated to animals, particularly the ram, a symbol of fertility and protection. Sculptures of these creatures, sometimes larger than life, guard the remaining spaces as if standing vigil over the centuries. The site also contains unique architectural forms. There are colonnaded halls, stepped platforms, and enclosures whose exact purposes remain unclear. Some may have served as ritual gathering spots, others as places of astronomical observation or spiritual practice. Scholars debate their functions, but there is no definitive answer. Even the most carefully preserved walls offer only fragments of the stories once told here. Consider the sands themselves. They have shifted and settled over centuries, concealing courtyards, statues, and inscriptions. Each layer of sand is a veil over history, a reminder that time slowly erases what once seemed permanent. As archaeologists dig, they uncover traces of ceremonial pathways, altars, and worn footprints, suggesting processions, worship, and sacred movement. Yet the precise meaning of these rituals, who performed them, and why, remains a riddle. The animal motifs are particularly intriguing. Many of the carvings depict rams, lions, and mythical creatures. These images suggest not only religious significance, but also connections to mythology, symbolism, and possibly cosmology. Some scholars speculate that Musawwarat es-Sufra may have been a center for ram cults, connecting earthly rulership with divine power. But, like much of Kushite culture, the symbolism is largely opaque to modern eyes, leaving the temples shrouded in speculation. Covering several square kilometers, it is far larger than most early Sudanese religious complexes. Temples are surrounded by enclosures that hint at population centers, ritual zones, and administrative spaces. The complexity of the construction, enormous stone blocks, carefully aligned pathways, and terraces, indicates a society with skilled architects, laborers, and a hierarchical organization capable of mobilizing resources on a massive scale. But what truly captivates historians and visitors alike is the air of mystery that pervades every corner. Unlike more famous sites like Karnak or Luxor, Musawwarat es-Sufra has been largely overlooked. Its temples are buried under centuries of wind, sand, and neglect. Walking among them, one feels a profound connection to the unknown, a sense that the past is speaking, quietly, through stone and dust. Archaeologists continue to study Musawwarat es-Sufra, trying to understand its rituals, social structure, and the people who built it. Yet every discovery seems to deepen the questions rather than answer them. Why were some areas elaborately decorated while others remain plain? What rituals took place on these sun-baked platforms? What stories did the statues of animals and mythological figures once tell? Each question is a fragment, a whisper from a civilization that refuses to be fully revealed. The desert has its own way of preserving history. Sand can both protect and obscure, shielding fragile walls and carvings from erosion, yet hiding the details until someone takes the time to uncover them. Even today, the site feels alive, as though the spirits of its builders, priests, and worshippers linger among the ruins, waiting for the stories to be understood. Musawwarat es-Sufra stands as a silent witness to human ambition, spirituality, and ingenuity. The temples are not just stones, they are echoes of a civilization's values, beliefs, and rituals. The carvings, altars, and statues are not merely decorative, they are messages, coded in stone, meant to convey meaning across centuries. Visiting the site in imagination, you can almost hear the faint rustle of sand, the distant cries of desert animals, and the echoes of ceremonies long vanished. The temples, half buried and mysterious, invite reflection on how human societies connect with the divine, nature, and each other. They challenge us to imagine the people who built them, the rituals they performed, and the beliefs they held sacred. The sand-covered temples of Musawarat as Sufra remain a testament to the enduring power of mystery. They remind us that the past is not always neatly recorded in texts or monuments, but often hidden, waiting for patient eyes to uncover it. For every stone lifted, every pathway traced, we glimpse a fragment of a world that was vibrant, complex, and deeply human. Even as the desert continues its slow reclamation, covering walls and statues with shifting sands, the temples continue to speak, quietly, insistently, and profoundly. Each carved ram, each worn pathway, each buried wall, is a piece of a puzzle we are still learning to assemble. The story of Musawarat as Sufra is not complete, and perhaps it never will be. Yet in its silence, it teaches us to wonder, to question, and to marvel at the ingenuity and devotion of those who came before us. The copper shields of Marlik. In the rolling foothills of northern Iran, near the Caspian Sea, lies Marlik, a place that whispers of kings, warriors, and artisans long gone. Buried beneath layers of earth, archaeologists have unearthed treasures that reveal the skill, artistry, and ceremonial importance of ancient life in this region. Among the most fascinating of these finds are the copper shields, not merely weapons, but objects of power, ritual, and mystery. These shields are crafted from sheets of hammered copper, shaped into perfect discs, often with intricate designs etched across their surfaces. The patterns are not random. They depict animals, geometric motifs, and symbolic images that hint at the worldview of Marlik's people. Some shields were clearly functional, built to protect warriors in battle. Others seemed too delicate for combat, suggesting ceremonial use, perhaps in rituals of initiation, royal ceremonies, or funerary practices. Imagine the hands that created them. Artisans in ancient Marlik would have spent countless hours hammering the metal, annealing it, shaping it to perfection. Every curve, every etching, every embossed image was a deliberate choice, reflecting both technical mastery and cultural significance. These shields were more than tools, they were statements of identity, power, and belief. Marlik was a society that revered both the living and the dead. Many of these shields were found in burial sites, accompanying the elite as they entered the afterlife. Placed alongside other treasures, golden jewelry, ceramic vessels, and bronze daggers, the shields signaled status and ensured protection beyond the mortal realm. In some cases, their placement suggests a deep connection between martial skill and spiritual authority, as though the warriors who carried them in life were expected to retain their power in death. The designs on the shields are particularly striking. Some depict roaring lions or charging bulls, animals symbolizing strength and courage. Others feature intricate geometric patterns, spirals, and motifs that may have represented cosmic or spiritual ideas. These images were not decorative alone, they conveyed meaning, identity, and possibly even mystical power. Each shield was a message, a story in metal, crafted to endure for centuries. Archaeologists studying Marlik are still piecing together the society's structure. The shields offer clues, hints about warfare, ritual, and hierarchy. Some suggest the presence of an elite warrior class, whose ceremonial armor and shields marked them as protectors of kings or sacred sites. Others indicate that the shields were used in religious or symbolic ceremonies, not war, connecting the community with divine forces. The craftsmanship raises questions even for modern experts. How did artisans achieve such precise forms without modern tools? How did they know which alloys to use to ensure strength and durability while still allowing delicate embossing? The techniques of Marlik remain partially mysterious, preserved only in the metal that has survived the passage of time. Imagine walking through a tomb where these shields were found. The copper glints faintly in the torchlight or sunlight filtered through the earth. Each shield rests carefully on the shoulders of the deceased, or leaned against walls, as if guarding them. One can almost hear the faint echo of ancient ceremonies, the voices of priests, the clanging of metal in ritual preparation. Every shield is a fragment of a story of power, devotion, and artistry. The discovery of these shields also raises broader questions about ancient trade and cultural exchange. The metal, the techniques, and some of the motifs suggest connections to distant regions. Marlik was not isolated, it was part of a network of ideas, goods, and technologies that stretched across the ancient Near East. These shields are tangible evidence of a civilization that was sophisticated, connected, and innovative. But for all the information they provide, the shields retain an aura of mystery. We may never know precisely what ceremonies they were used in, or the names and stories of those who carried them. We can only infer from their placement, design, and craftsmanship. And perhaps that is the beauty of Marlik. It allows the imagination to wander, to feel the presence of a people who lived, fought, and worshipped centuries before us. The copper shields of Marlik remind us that objects carry memory. They are more than metal, they are the imprint of a culture's ideals, fears, and aspirations. They speak across time, telling us about courage, artistry, and reverence. Holding their story in mind, one can almost feel the weight of the shields, the touch of the artisan's hands, and the pulse of a civilization that honored both life and death through creation. These shields endure not only as artifacts but as bridges across millennia. They connect us to the past in ways that words alone cannot. They ask us to imagine the ancient ceremonies, the proud warriors, and the artisans who shaped each curve and etching. They invite us to pause, to reflect, and to recognize that some mysteries are meant to inspire awe rather than offer definitive answers. The copper shields of Marlik are a testament to human ingenuity, devotion, and the enduring power of art and ritual. They remind us that even when civilizations vanish, their creations continue to speak, silently, profoundly, and eternally. The unfinished stone lions of Persepolis. Persepolis, the ancient ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire, rises like a ghost from the Iranian plateau, its grand terraces and monumental staircases still hinting at the power and glory of kings long gone. Among its many marvels, intricate reliefs, towering columns, and carved gateways lie figures that remain eternally incomplete, the unfinished stone lions. These half-formed guardians, frozen in time, are a profound reminder of human ambition, interruption, and the mysteries that history leaves behind. The lions at Persepolis were intended as protectors. In many ancient cultures, lions symbolized strength, courage, and vigilance. At the entrances to palaces and ceremonial spaces, they were believed to ward off evil, asserting dominance both spiritually and politically. The lions at Persepolis, however, are different. Some appear only partially carved, with limbs, jaws, or manes barely emerging from the massive stone blocks. Their unfinished state is both haunting and mesmerizing, as if the sculptors paused mid-creation and time itself preserved their hesitation. Imagine the hands that once wielded chisels and hammers, striking rhythmically into limestone, envisioning a guardian that would endure centuries. Every strike of the tool required precision and immense skill. The artisans likely worked under the watchful eyes of royal patrons, knowing that their creations would be seen by kings, dignitaries, and visitors from distant lands. Yet, for reasons lost to history, some lions were never completed. Some scholars suggest that political upheaval or sudden change in royal priorities halted the work. Others speculate that the laborers themselves might have abandoned certain sections due to resource limitations, structural difficulties, or unforeseen dangers in the quarrying and transportation process. Whatever the reason, the unfinished lions serve as silent witnesses to both human intent and human imperfection. Walking among these half-carved forms, one feels a connection not just to the past, but to the process itself. The unfinished limbs seem to invite imagination to picture the full majesty that was intended, to sense the labor, devotion, and artistry that would have brought these stone guardians fully to life. There is an intimacy in their incompleteness, a direct line from the sculptor's mind to ours, bridging millennia with a single frozen gesture. The site of Persepolis itself adds layers to the mystery. The complex was vast, with terraces, audience halls, and ceremonial staircases decorated with reliefs depicting processions of tribute-bearers, soldiers, and courtiers. The unfinished lions were not isolated. They were part of an ambitious vision, a city of stone meant to reflect imperial ideology, spiritual authority, and the Achaemenid conception of order. Their incompletion adds a layer of enigma to the already majestic site, a whisper of what might have been, and a question about why it was halted. The artistry of the lions, even incomplete, is astonishing. You can see the sculptor's attention to musculature, posture, and expression. Even in their unfinished state, the lions convey potential energy, a sense that had the chisels continued, these creatures would have seemed ready to leap, guarding the palaces of kings. The texture of the limestone, the deliberate strokes of the chisel, and the partially defined manes hint at both technical mastery and artistic vision. These unfinished lions are also symbolic. They remind us that history is not always complete. Civilizations rise and fall, plans are interrupted, and not all ambition comes to fruition. The lions embody this idea. They are partially realized, yet in their incompleteness, they tell a story as compelling as any finished work. They speak of human effort, impermanence, and the traces we leave behind, even when plans change. Archaeologists studying Persepolis continue to debate the reasons behind the unfinished lions. Some suggest natural factors, such as cracks in the stone that made completion impossible. Others argue political instability. The empire faced internal revolts and later conquest by Alexander the Great, which may have abruptly halted construction projects. Regardless of the cause, the incomplete carvings remain a testament to human ambition, frozen in a moment of history. Walking among the lions in imagination, one can almost hear the echoes of the sculptor's hammers, the murmurs of supervisors, and the distant proclamations of kings. Each strike, each unfinished stroke, is a message from the past, a record of effort, skill, and intention interrupted by forces beyond the artisan's control. The unfinished lions are therefore more than objects, they are a window into the working life, priorities, and challenges of an empire at its height. The unfinished stone lions of Persepolis remind us that history is not always neatly packaged or fully realized. Some stories are incomplete, some monuments remain partially formed, and some intentions are left to imagination. Yet even in their incompleteness, these lions convey power, artistry, and the enduring human desire to create and protect. They invite contemplation of the past, the fragility of human endeavors, and the silent grandeur of those who labored under the sun, chiseling visions into stone. Their presence is haunting, almost meditative. They encourage us to pause, to appreciate both achievement and imperfection, and to recognize that sometimes mysteries are at their most compelling when unfinished. In the half-carved jaws, the paused paws, and the frozen manes, we see the intersection of ambition, skill, and history itself. And in that intersection, we find a story that continues to speak across millennia. The unfinished stone lions are not just remnants of an empire, they are reminders that even incomplete works can inspire awe, reflection, and a sense of connection across time. They stand as timeless witnesses to human effort, ambition, and the mysteries that remain, waiting for patient eyes to discover them. The silver diadem of La Almoloya Queen. In the sun-scorched plains of southeastern Spain, near the ancient site of La Almoloya, archaeologists uncovered one of the most intriguing treasures of the Iberian Bronze Age, a silver diadem, worn by a woman whose life and status remained shrouded in mystery. This was no ordinary piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of authority, ritual significance, and possibly a window into the social and political structures of a civilization long forgotten. The diadem, carefully hammered and shaped from pure silver, gleams even after thousands of years underground. Its delicate filigree, the precision of its curves, and the tiny, almost imperceptible engravings suggest a level of craftsmanship that would rival later civilizations. The wearer of this diadem was clearly someone of immense importance, a queen, priestess or matriarch, whose influence extended across both the material and spiritual realms of La Almoloya. Imagine the hands that fashioned it. Artisans would have spent weeks, perhaps months, perfecting every detail. Silver is not an easy material to manipulate. It requires repeated heating, hammering, and bending to achieve the desired shape. Each swirl and etched motif represents hours of concentrated effort, skill, and artistic vision. The diadem itself was not just ornamentation, it was a statement of identity, authority, and perhaps divine connection. The burial context of the diadem adds layers to its story. La Almoloya is renowned for its elite tombs, some of which contained extraordinary treasures. The woman who wore this silver crown was interred with an array of artifacts, intricately decorated vessels, finely crafted weapons, and other items of ritual importance. Together, these objects reveal a culture that valued hierarchy, ceremonial power, and the intertwining of life and death. What makes the silver diadem so fascinating is not just its beauty, but the questions it raises. Who was this queen? What was her role in society? How did she come to command such status in a world where power structures are often obscured by time? Scholars have debated these questions since the diadem's discovery, using every fragment of evidence from burial placement to artifact analysis to reconstruct a life that remains elusive. The diadem also sheds light on gender dynamics in ancient Iberia. Many societies of the Bronze Age are assumed to have been patriarchal, yet the prominence of this woman's burial suggests that women could hold significant religious, political, or ceremonial authority. The artifacts accompanying her, weapons, ceremonial objects, and the crown itself, indicate that she may have been a central figure in both governance and ritual, a queen who wielded influence that extended beyond her tomb. The artistry of the diadem is remarkable. Tiny, stylized motifs appear along the band, including patterns that may represent the sun, fertility, or protective symbols. Each engraving is deliberate, designed to convey meaning as well as aesthetic appeal. In a way, the diadem was both a personal adornment and a communicative device, sending messages to those who saw it about power, divinity, and social hierarchy. The discovery also raises questions about trade and technology. Silver, though found in various regions of ancient Iberia, was highly prized and often imported. The techniques used to create the diadem, hammering, engraving, filigree, suggest connections to wider Mediterranean craftsmanship. La Almoloya was not isolated, it was part of a network of communities exchanging goods, ideas, and artistic techniques, and this diadem is a testament to that cultural connectivity. Walking through the tomb in imagination, one can almost see the queen herself, adorned with the silver crown. Perhaps she presided over ceremonial rituals, received ambassadors from distant lands, or commanded loyalty from her people. The diadem would have gleamed in the sunlight, reflecting both physical light and the metaphorical light of her authority. It was more than decoration, it was a symbol, a marker of influence, and a bridge between mortal life and the spiritual realm. The silver diadem of La Almoloya Queen is also a lesson in impermanence and memory. The woman who wore it has long since passed, her name forgotten, her deeds lost to history. Yet her diadem survives, offering a tangible connection to her life, her society, and the artistry of her age. It invites contemplation of legacy, how material culture can outlast human life, preserving stories, hierarchies, and mysteries for thousands of years. Archaeologists continue to study La Almoloya, uncovering more artifacts that illuminate the complexity of its society. The diadem stands out among them, not just for its beauty, but for what it represents: a world where women could wield power, where art and ritual intertwined, and where human ingenuity created objects that would outlast centuries. The silver crown is a symbol of both achievement and enigma, a reminder that history often preserves fragments, leaving us to imagine the fullness of life from the echoes of the past. Even after millennia, the diadem communicates. It speaks of authority and ritual, of craftsmanship and symbolism. It whispers questions we may never fully answer about identity, power, and cultural values in a society that thrived thousands of years ago. The silver crown endures as a bridge across time, connecting us to a queen whose story is partially told through the glint of metal, the delicacy of engraving, and the silent testimony of a tomb. The silver diadem of La Almoloya Queen is more than an artifact. It is a window into the past, a reflection of human skill, ambition, and the desire to create objects that convey meaning far beyond their material. It invites reflection on leadership, artistry, and the fragility of human memory, while simultaneously captivating the imagination with its beauty and mystery. In studying it, we glimpse the sophistication of an ancient society, the power of a queen, and the enduring resonance of human craftsmanship. The skull masks of Carthage. Carthage, perched along the coast of what is now Tunisia, was once a bustling center of trade, culture, and power in the ancient Mediterranean. Its harbors were filled with ships from distant lands, its streets alive with merchants, artisans, and citizens of a thriving civilization. But beneath this grandeur lies a darker, more enigmatic layer of history: the ritualistic world of death, memory, and symbolic transformation. Among its most mysterious artifacts are the skull masks of Carthage, objects that straddle the line between the living and the dead, the ceremonial and the symbolic. These masks are made from actual human skulls, modified and adorned for ritual use. Some are inlaid with precious metals, others feature carved patterns, and a few even show traces of pigments used to highlight facial features. The skull masks were likely worn, displayed, or used in ceremonies that honored ancestors, deities, or the cycle of life and death. Each mask represents a unique fusion of artistry, belief, and reverence, and they reveal a society that engaged with mortality in ways that challenge modern understanding. Imagine the care that went into creating these masks. Working with human remains demands both skill and respect, and the artisans of Carthage must have been guided by a profound sense of ritual significance. Every cut, every inlay, every painted line was deliberate, not just decoration, but a language of the sacred. These were not trophies, nor mere curiosities. They were conduits between worlds, tools that allowed the living to communicate with the departed, to invoke protection, or perhaps to ensure favor from unseen powers. The context of their discovery adds to their intrigue. Archaeologists have unearthed these masks in cemeteries, tombs, and sacred precincts, often alongside offerings, pottery, and other ceremonial objects. This placement suggests that the masks were intimately tied to funerary rites or cultic practices, marking a stage of life beyond death. The precise meaning of each mask remains debated. Were they protective, commemorative, or perhaps intended to terrify enemies in ritualistic enactments? The answers remain elusive, leaving the imagination to wander across centuries. Carthaginian culture is often remembered for its commercial prowess and military history. Yet artifacts like these skull masks hint at a rich spiritual and ritual dimension. The masks reveal a civilization deeply engaged with symbolism, authority, and ancestral veneration. Some scholars suggest that the masks were part of elite burial rituals, reserved for leaders, priests, or warriors whose influence extended into the afterlife. Others propose that they had broader societal functions, participating in ceremonies that reinforced communal identity and continuity across generations. The artistry of the skull masks is haunting. Even stripped of context, they convey a powerful sense of presence. The eyes, hollow yet filled with purpose, seem to observe and reflect simultaneously. The carved patterns and metallic inlays catch the light in a way that animates the ancient face, offering a glimpse into both the technical mastery and the aesthetic sensibilities of Carthaginian artisans. In some masks, delicate engravings may represent protective symbols, while in others, the focus is on the individuality of the deceased, immortalized through careful craftsmanship. The mystery of these masks extends beyond their appearance. Why did Carthaginians choose human skulls rather than other materials? What rituals were performed with them? Were they part of a secret priestly tradition, a common practice among certain social classes, or a ceremonial art form whose rules were lost over centuries? Every mask is a question, and every discovery brings both insight and further puzzles. Their existence also raises broader questions about how ancient societies viewed death and the afterlife. In many cultures, death was not an end, but a transformation, a passage to another realm. The skull masks of Carthage embody this worldview. Representing both the finality of mortality and the ongoing influence of ancestors, they serve as a reminder that even in civilizations often reduced to their economic and military achievements, there existed deep, sophisticated approaches to spirituality and human connection. Handling these artifacts in imagination, one can almost sense the ceremonial air of Carthaginian temples and tombs. The masks might have been carried in processions, worn by participants in sacred rites, or placed upon the deceased during burial. The metallic glints, the carved lines, and traces of paint evoke a sensory richness, the sounds of chanting, the smells of incense, and the tactile feeling of ceremonial fabric or stone beneath the hands of the participants. Scholars continue to study the masks, examining everything from the chemical composition of pigments to wear patterns and archaeological context. Each detail offers new insights into Carthaginian ritual life, yet many aspects remain uncertain. The masks occupy a liminal space between art and death, history and mystery, leaving their full purpose tantalizingly out of reach. The skull masks of Carthage are not merely relics, they are fragments of a worldview, tangible remnants of a society grappling with mortality, memory, and the unseen forces that shape human life. They invite reflection, curiosity, and awe. They ask us to consider how the dead were honored, how art and ritual intertwined, and how civilizations leave traces of both their grandeur and their mysteries. Even after thousands of years, these skull masks continue to communicate across time. Their hollow eyes, intricate carvings, and enduring presence speak of reverence, creativity, and the human desire to understand life and death. They remind us that history is often incomplete, that cultural practices may elude full comprehension, and that some mysteries are most compelling when they resist resolution. In the silver diadem of La Moloya, we saw authority. In the skull masks of Carthage, we see a culture deeply intertwined with life, death, and the sacred, leaving behind artifacts that continue to challenge, inspire, and mesmerize. The spiral-carved bones of Malta. Malta, a small archipelago in the heart of the Mediterranean, is often celebrated for its megalithic temples, hidden caves, and rich prehistoric history. Yet among its many secrets lie artifacts that puzzle even the most seasoned archaeologists: the spiral-carved bones. Unlike the imposing temples or intricate stonework, these objects are subtle, delicate, and full of enigmatic purpose. They are fragments of a world long gone, bearing marks of a human hand, and whispering stories that time has refused to fully reveal. The spiral carvings etched into bones are deceptively simple at first glance. Their grooves twist and turn, forming patterns that are hypnotic in their repetition, intricate in their execution, and precise beyond what might be expected from the tools of the Neolithic and Bronze Age inhabitants of Malta. These are not casual scratches or incidental marks left by daily life. Every line, every curve, seems deliberate, a form of communication, artistry, or symbolic meaning that has been lost to us. Imagine an artisan of prehistoric Malta, holding a small animal bone, a sharp flint tool in hand, carving spirals into the surface with patience and care. Each spiral may have required hours of concentration, a delicate balance of pressure and precision, as the soft bone was slowly shaped into a vessel of meaning. The repetitive nature of the spirals suggests ritual significance, perhaps a meditative act, a talismanic purpose, or a recording of cycles, such as the phases of the moon, seasons, or life itself. The context of these bones is just as mysterious as the carvings themselves. Found in caves, burial sites, and occasionally alongside tools or pottery, the spiral bones may have been part of ritual offerings, personal adornments, or symbolic objects intended to guide the living and honor the dead. Their placement suggests reverence, a careful selection, and a deliberate act of preservation. They were valued, protected, and hidden, artifacts of meaning preserved for millennia. These spiral carvings challenge assumptions about prehistoric Malta. while temples and large stone structures indicate communal effort and ceremonial life. The bones reveal a more intimate, individual level of engagement with spirituality and symbolism. The creator of each bone was not building a monument for thousands to see, but crafting something personal, yet powerful enough to endure through centuries. It is a glimpse into a mind, a hand, and a culture that thought deeply about patterns, cycles, and the unseen connections of life. Some scholars suggest that the spirals may have held magical or protective power. Spirals, after all, appear repeatedly in global prehistoric art, from Ireland to North Africa, often associated with water, fertility, life cycles, or spiritual journeys. Could these Maltese spirals have served as a conduit for prayers, blessings, or intentions? Or were they simply an aesthetic choice, a fascination with the geometry of nature, echoing the circular movements of planets, stars, and tides? The craftsmanship of these bones is striking. The grooves are precise, smooth, and consistent. For prehistoric tools, working bone to such exacting standards would have required incredible skill and patience. Mistakes could ruin the piece, and yet countless spiral bones survive today, suggesting that this was a practiced, perhaps even ritualized art form, passed down through generations. Their significance also lies in what they tell us about the people of Malta. These were individuals who observed, reflected, and created. They engaged with their environment and the unseen forces they perceived, translating complex ideas into a simple but profound medium, bone. The smallness of the artifact contrasts with the depth of its cultural significance, revealing that even the humblest objects can carry immense meaning across time. Handling the bones in imagination, one might envision the quiet focus of an ancient hand carving, late into the evening, with the flicker of firelight and the faint murmur of life outside the cave. The spirals may have been meditative, each twist a mark of contemplation, a prayer, or a symbolic map of existence. Perhaps they were worn as amulets, passed from hand to hand, or buried alongside loved ones to guide them on a journey into the afterlife. The possibilities stretch endlessly, limited only by our imagination. Even today, when archaeologists examine these bones under microscopes, using modern tools to study every groove and curve, the deeper meaning remains elusive. Chemical traces, wear patterns, and context provide clues, but they cannot fully answer the fundamental questions. Who carved these spirals? Why? And what did they signify to the people who valued them enough to preserve them across centuries? The spiral-carved bones of Malta are a testament to the enduring human desire to leave a mark on the world, to communicate across time, and to engage with mystery. They are small, delicate, yet profoundly resonant, reminding us that not all of human ingenuity resides in grand monuments or monumental stone. Some of the most powerful messages are etched into the quiet, intimate artifacts, objects that invite curiosity, contemplation, and wonder. As we consider these spiral bones, we are drawn into a web of questions about ritual, symbolism, and human perception. They bridge the gap between the past and present, between the seen and unseen, and between what survives materially and what lingers in memory and imagination. Every curve and twist is an invitation to reflect on how our ancestors understood their world, and how some of their ideas continue to speak to us even today. The bones, though small, hold weighty significance. They remind us that history is composed not only of monumental achievements, but also of tiny, intricate gestures that reveal human thought, creativity, and spirituality. Each spiral is a whisper from a past world, a message encoded in bone, awaiting attentive eyes to decode it. And while we may never fully understand the rituals or beliefs behind them, their very existence connects us to the people of ancient Malta, bridging millennia through artistry, intention, and care. In the quiet curves of a spiral carved into bone, we glimpse the enduring pulse of human curiosity, reverence, and creativity. It is a subtle but profound reminder. Even the smallest artifacts can carry mysteries that challenge, inspire, and mesmerize, whispering stories that time has almost forgotten. The golden horns of Galahus's. Denmark, a land of windswept plains, fjords, and ancient settlements, is home to one of the most tantalizing mysteries of early European history, the Golden Horns of Galahus. These artifacts, discovered in the early 19th century, are not just treasures of gold, but also vessels of enigma, skill, and storytelling that have fascinated historians, archaeologists, and treasure seekers for generations. The golden horns were found in southern Jutland, buried in the earth as if deliberately hidden by hands long gone. Each horn, crafted entirely of gold, stretches over half a meter in length. Their surfaces are covered in intricate designs, stylized animals, interwoven lines, and symbols whose meanings are still debated today. These are not merely decorative. Every curve and motif seems deliberate, purposeful, a visual language from a society that existed more than a millennium ago. To hold a horn in your imagination is to imagine the quiet reverence of the people who created it. Gold is soft, pliable, and precious. Carving detailed figures into such a malleable medium requires extraordinary skill and patience. These craftsmen were artists and storytellers, embedding messages, myths, and symbols into objects that would endure beyond their lifetimes. Each horn may have been used in rituals, as ceremonial objects, or as offerings to the gods, signaling both power and devotion. The context of their discovery adds another layer to the story. Found buried in separate locations but linked by style and function, the horns suggest a culture with deep ritual practices and symbolic communication. Some scholars believe they were part of sacred ceremonies, perhaps sounded during feasts, religious gatherings, or rites of passage. Others argue that the horns were symbolic markers of wealth and authority, objects that proclaimed the status of their owner within the community. Yet the mystery deepens because of what happened after their discovery. The original horns, once carefully excavated, were eventually stolen in the 19th century and melted down, their golden bodies lost to the world forever. What survives today are meticulous drawings, casts, and reproductions, but the originals, with their aura and material presence, vanished. This loss has only amplified their legend. Scholars must now rely on sketches and descriptions, trying to interpret symbols and meanings without the tangible, weighty reality of gold in hand. The motifs etched onto the horns are themselves riddles. Animals in fantastical forms, serpents, birds, and hybrid creatures, twist and intertwine across the surface. Some researchers suggest these figures represent mythological tales, cosmic principles, or protective spirits. Others speculate that they encode historical events, lineages, or allegories meant for initiates who understood their meaning. The truth is elusive. Each twist of the design, each detail of the engraving, invites questions about belief, ritual, and symbolism in early Danish society. These horns also provoke reflection on the broader human relationship with material and meaning. Gold, in many ancient cultures, was associated with the divine, immortality, and transcendence. By embedding artistic motifs in gold, the people of Galahus created objects that were not merely practical but sacred, enduring beyond the limits of ordinary life. In this sense, the horns are both art and message, a fusion of skill, culture, and spiritual intent. Handling them in imagination, one can envision ceremonies in the longhouses or open-air temples of early Denmark. The horns might have been raised to call attention, mark the passage of ritual, or celebrate communal events. The golden surfaces would have caught sunlight or firelight, glinting in a way that mesmerized participants, creating both awe and reverence. They were both tools and symbols, objects that could communicate across generations, carrying memory and meaning into the future. The story of the golden horns is also a cautionary tale. The loss of the original horns reminds us of the fragility of human achievement. Even the most extraordinary artifacts can disappear, leaving only fragments, sketches, and stories. Yet this absence contributes to their mystique. Scholars, artists, and enthusiasts continue to study and reimagine the horns, reconstructing them in drawings, models, and modern replicas. In this way, their legacy endures, not only as physical objects but as symbols of a civilization's ingenuity, spirituality, and artistry. The horns, with their spiraling decorations, hint at a sophisticated worldview. Patterns may have represented cosmological beliefs, the cycles of nature, or mythic narratives. Perhaps they were instruments of sound, in rituals meant to honor deities, ancestors, or the land itself. Each line and figure is a whisper from the past, a communication across centuries that continues to challenge modern understanding. Even without the original objects, the golden horns of Galahus remain powerful testaments to human creativity. They remind us that early European societies were not merely functional or primitive, but deeply symbolic, capable of complex thought and aesthetic expression. These horns, in their design, material, and implied function, invite us to contemplate how humans create meaning, commemorate, and interact with the sacred. Their story stretches from the hands of ancient artisans to the modern imagination. Though the gold may be lost, the motifs, the designs, and the ideas endure. They whisper of ritual, authority, belief, and artistry, of people who sought to leave something behind that would transcend life itself. The golden horns of Galahus are more than archaeological curiosities. They are bridges across time, connecting us with minds, hands, and beliefs of people who lived over 1,000 years ago. They challenge us to think about what we value, what we preserve, and how even fragile human endeavors can echo across centuries. Their spirals, animals, and intricate engravings continue to mesmerize, teach, and inspire, ensuring that the legacy of Galahus remains alive in both scholarship and imagination.